Hello, welcome to the Titans of Sports Betting. All right, thank you for joining us today. I'm Jason Raznick, CEO of Benzinga, and this is our MC, none other than Luke Jacoby. Say hello, Luke.
Hello. I'm excited to get rolling today. A lot of great conversations to be had. The inside look into the sports betting industry.
Yeah, this is exciting. We're going to have from sportsbooks, CEOs, all the types, the heavy hitters. This is our inaugural Benzinga Titan Sports Betting Summit. And we didn't stop, just because it's our first event, Luke, doing this, we didn't say we're going to go half-assed. We brought the biggest and the best guests that will be on with us all day today. And if you want to learn about this industry, this is the place to do it. Look at the markets. I mean, you've seen the sports betting stocks and what they've done. What'd you say, about 18% this year?
They're almost 20% now.
Yeah, and so the stock market has been around for how many years? I don't even know when that the thing was signed at the New York Stock Exchange, or the cotton
Under the tree.
Under the tree, exactly. And so sports betting is where the stock market was many a year ago. There's new companies like Mojo. We're betting on players. There's companies that exist, the MGMs, the FanDuels, the DraftKings. There's a wide variety of players, and what's going to change over the next 1 to 5 years is going to be drastic. There's going to be big winners that if you're here now, if you learn about them, if you listen to our show, you're going to make money. But it's important to pay attention to see how these trends play, what these CEOs talk about. And it's just a very exciting time to be in the sports betting fantasy space.
100%. And part of our mission here at Benzinga is that we want to be on the cutting edge of these developing industries. We're going to talk to companies today that have more than doubled revenue over the course of the past year. There's not many industries in which that's happening, especially in the market that we live in today. And so this is your inside look. You know, the thing I suggest to everybody is have the notepad out, have the pen in hand, and pay good attention. Write the notes down. Figure out what are the drivers of these businesses. How is each business positioned? You know, we're doing this so that way our investors have that true inside look of this emerging industry. And like we mentioned, the stocks are up 20% this year. You're more than doubling your return in the S&P 500.
And, you know, like there used to be big tentpole events that everyone bet on, the Kentucky Derby and the Super Bowl. What sports betting, watching games and betting during the game has made sports betting available to almost 50 million people a year, betting on games that they never would have. People are tuning in, not just to see who wins, but to have action, to have fun, and make predictions on what's going to happen next. So in some respect, if you look at the stock market where people make bets, daily bets, long-term bets, sports betting is a microcosm of the stock market. You're betting on a team. I mean, are you going to, like, for example, I know PFT, Big Cat, 20-1 odds, Brooks Koepka. I think he bet $3,000 and he won 60. So those kind of opportunities happen in the sports betting space where you have a conviction, you have and so like you have conviction and you make a bet and you can see the fruits of your bet if you win. The other thing is for TV, live TV, must-see TV. Sports betting has helped grow. I mean, look at NBA, the new contracts that are coming out in the NBA space. And a lot of this has to do with sports gambling. And that's why, sports gambling becoming legal even before cannabis is and nationwide is, not nationwide, statewide is pretty impressive. But I think you'll see a nationwide movement to it because it just brings so much money to so many different parties. And when money comes to different things like the NBA or the teams, guess what? States get more taxes. So when you're looking at how do we raise taxes, gambling helps that. So before, we're legal in 36 states and Washington, D.C. But before...
And I'll add on to that, $20 billion worth of bets will be placed by Americans this year.
20 billion?
20 billion. And again, it's an industry that's only been around digitally and in several of these states for a couple of years at this point.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not getting involved in this space or paying attention to ETFs in this space or the companies like you're missing out. And if you're tuning in right now and you're on YouTube or on the Benzinga.com live stream, make sure to like and give this a share to your friends. Go to your Facebook page, let your friends know. We got people like Jake Paul coming up. All the major companies. There's probably a list of the agenda on the site. If there's not, we'll put it up on the page. Yeah, there is. Right below the feed, there's a list of who's coming up. So, let your friends know. Go to StockTwits on Twitter. Share the symbols of who's going to be coming up and put our link out there. We appreciate it. By you doing that, this allows us to make this show for free and allows us to, put this live for you guys. So your support is needed and appreciated. So give it a share and tag the stock symbol with a dollar symbol, and that will help us. All right.
That's what the community is all about.
That's
We bring the content. Help us bring your friends. And make sure everybody gets this opportunity.
Yeah, we bring the content. You bring your friends. If you can agree on that deal, we can do more of these. And then you tell us who you want on next. We'll bring them on. I promise you that. You want Warren Buffett? We'll make it happen. Okay. So without further ado, I know Luke, you have a little special video to pull up here. So take it away, Luke.
You teased it. We have a heavy hitting agenda for this first segment. Heavy hitting, literally. Jason, I think it's time to cut to your conversation. YouTuber, boxer, co-founder of Betr, Jake Paul, and co-founder, CEO of Betr, Joey Levy. Let's take it away.
Welcome back to the Benzinga Titans Sports Betting Summit. We are super excited to have the founders of Betr, Joey Levy and Jake Paul. The company, which probably most of you guys have heard of, is interesting. It takes a different take on micro betting, and we're going to learn about micro betting in a minute. But the thing is, I have friends, their kids, they're 20 years old, 25 years old, 26 years old. They don't watch a sport event without an iPhone doing these little bets. So that's why I'm truly excited to hear about what Betr is. Joey or Jake, do you guys want to describe what Betr is?
Sure, maybe I'll start and then Jake could speak about sort of our media arm. And I think one of the things that is really underappreciated about Betr is we're not just a sports betting company, but we're also a media company. So super high level, you have Betr Holdings, you have Betr Gaming, and you have Betr Media. Betr Gaming is predominantly differentiated in two key ways. One is we have a far simpler and more intuitive user experience. So and for more context on what that means, I remember when I started my prior company, SimpleBet, and ultimately this served as the inspiration for Betr. And I tried to bet on sports for the first time, and I saw -175 money line, +5.5 point spread. And, I'm not the smartest guy in any room that I go into, but I was an Ivy League educated former daily fantasy sports operator who literally couldn't bet on sports because the product experience was uninterpretable, right? It's not intuitive that -175 means to bet 175 to win 100, for example. So the vision on the UI UX front is to really build like the Robin Hood to the gambling industry's E-Trade, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, right? Those latter products built really good experiences for the power day trader, but it took Robin Hood to come around and create incremental TAM by enabling regular mainstream consumers to engage with the product experience. So we differentiate through the simple, intuitive UI UX. And then the second thing is this emphasis on instant gratification betting, micro betting. And by micro betting, we don't mean small transaction amounts, but rather we mean micro timeframes with respect to the duration of the betting markets. And one thing that's really underappreciated about micro betting is that before the US market opened up, it never really made sense for micro betting to be something that you heavily invested in, because the global marketplace is driven predominantly by soccer, which is a fluid game without a lot of moments to bet on, without a lot of scoring. But if you think of the cadence and composition of US sports, they're very stop and start, moment to moment. You have pitches and at bats. You have plays and drives. A lot of scoring and speculation over superstar players and what they'll do next. So micro betting, we think, may ultimately be the predominant way people bet on U.S. sports, because not just how nicely suited they are to the cadence and composition of U.S. sports, but it introduces an order of magnitude greater level of instant gratification of the consumer experience in a world where consumers just have increasingly lower attention spans, given there's so many different options to entertain oneself nowadays. So that's really what serves as the two core differentiating pillars of Betr Gaming. Sports media is arguably just as antiquated as is the gaming side of this business, and I'll let Jake speak to how we seek to differentiate ourselves from a media and content creation standpoint.
Yeah. So basically, when I was getting, involved in this industry, the companies I was working with were just throwing millions and millions of dollars around for marketing and ideas and trying to come up with content. And none of it was organic and really didn't make any sense. It was confusing and not super intuitive. And when I met Joey, I instantly fell in love with the demo version of the Betr app at the time. And really, our goal with Betr Media is to drive tons of attention to this product to lower the customer acquisition cost, which is obviously like the main expense for all of these companies, DraftKings, FanDuel. There's billions of dollars of marketing spend and a very high customer acquisition cost. And so we're really building content, building out a talent network, different sports shows, and growing our user base and brand organically, which has like been my expertise. I've amassed 70 million followers and haven't spent a dollar doing it. So my expertise is growing that audience and that brand affinity, and that's what we've already done on a major scale. And just taking a look at, what would it look like if ESPN were launched today? And it's creating a relationship with our audience and our fan base and our users, and just letting the curtains down, letting them behind the scenes, and really like mastering the social narrative and creating tons of talent who then go back and promote the app. And what we're already seeing and finding out is that our thesis from day one is now working incredibly. So pretty excited about it.
So BS with Jake Paul, right? That show has grown from nothing to what it is today. Do you find a lot of people like see the show and then hear about Betr versus you having to spend a bunch of money on paid media?
Exactly. The show, we have guests on. We pay for the cameras and the staff to press record, but it's so much cheaper, and we're generating millions and millions and millions of tens of millions of views, especially with the clip outs. Even just on the YouTube is one thing, but the clip outs go viral across all these different platforms. If the whole episode is 45 minutes, we'll take the best 6 moments that are 30 seconds long and put them out there. And the Betr logo is on all of those posts. And we're constantly talking about Betr, and we're growing the talent in Betr as well, who also are constantly talking about the product, making picks. And then it creates this natural relationship where whenever we have something that we want to promote in the product, we're able to naturally fuse it into the show. And the audience will want to like play along with us or play the Betr ticket, depending on like if there's a fight or whatever the promo is. It's just much more natural, and it doesn't feel like this advertisement that's being shoved in your face like Kevin Hart sitting on a couch. It's virtually free, and that's just like one example of what we've done, but it's been pretty successful.
Yeah, and this is what a media company being created today, this day and age. You can create a product within as part of a media company. And Joey, how did you? I know you were a Teal Fellow and you had Simplebet. How did you meet Jake?
Sure. So while I was still building Simplebet, I met actually Jake's partner Jeff Wu on Anti-Fund while I was actively thinking through, because I started Simplebet as I may have alluded to at the beginning of this conversation, to simplify the sports betting user experience to effectively do what we're doing with Betr today. And then ultimately PASPA got repealed. We started focusing on US sports, and we realized that a lot of the technical infrastructure to enable micro betting and other forms of in-play betting that were bespoke for US sports did not exist. So Simplebet, out of necessity initially, had to build this product and technology. And today, Simplebet is one of the leading B2B technology companies in the category, powering businesses like DraftKings, Caesars, Bet365, et cetera. However, as a B2B technology company, you have no control over the front end consumer experience. And you also have no control with respect to how you go about developing your brand, as Jake put very nicely a few minutes ago, not just spending a ton of money on advertising like car insurance companies, but rather building grassroots level brand affinity with the consumer. Like, I think we're going to be successful with how we're building our audience because we're really focused on building brand affinity. Consumers nowadays, they're increasingly smarter and more sophisticated, and they're not just going to see a brand, like Kevin Hart or whoever say, BetMGM, here's a bonus credit, whatever. Like they're going to want to feel connected with the brand, and they're going to want to know about the product and why it exists. So I met Jeff, and then he introduced me to Jake through that thinking of how can we go after the consumer opportunity so that we could win long term over the UI UX and the brand development and distribution. It's not enough for the consumer today to just be able to bet on Aaron Judge while he's on deck. People want to be able to bet on Aaron Judge while he's at home plate. Ball one comes in, it's a 1-0 count. Then they could take revised odds on a 1-1 count, then 1-2 count, etc. And you need to automate the market mechanics in order to enable the consumer to engage with that experience. Because quite literally, when the pitcher nods their head and agrees to the pitch with the catcher, we trigger market suspension. And then the moment the pitch is delivered, we re-enable the market such that the consumer can bet for pretty much the entire duration of their at bat, and the market's only suspended when there's something in the event that is happening that would subsequently influence the probabilities. For example, if that didn't exist, the markets would be suspended for a prohibitively long period of time, and the consumer experience would never exist to begin with. So there's a lot of really robust technology behind this that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it really means everything to the consumer experience. And everything we do from a product standpoint is really trying to build the best possible consumer experience for sports fans across the country. I know this is a financially focused show and media company that you have. DraftKings paid $600 million for SB Tech. Bally's paid over $100 million for BetWorks. It's rumors that Fanatics paid over $50 million for just a copy of a Melco source code. We bought the entire Chameleon platform, inclusive of a betting engine, PAM, casino management, etc., for $7.5 million USD, 40% of which is being paid for in equity at our latest valuation. So we're quite pleased with the acquisition, and I can't wait to launch V1 of the Betr product experience. What we have right now is a beta product. It's a V0. It demonstrates the two core tenets of the vision that I alluded to at the top: simple, intuitive UX and a focus on instant gratification betting. And it's a really strong product experience so far, but it's nowhere near where we want it to be or need it to be. So we're really excited to roll out V1 sometime next year on top of the Chameleon platform.
Jake, I know, Jake, I'm like maybe a media head or what have you, but I'm sitting here and I thought your best asset, your best trait was like you knew how to get media. Then I thought your best thing was you're a boxer. Then you have your best thing by far is putting the people around you. I've heard you talk about Joey. That answer was just and I know some of these software vendors like GAN who do the vertical, power these things. You're basically telling me you're all vertically integrated at this point. I mean, except that you're using simple bet technology for something, right?
We're using them for the micro betting API feeds, which they have a substantial first mover advantage on. And that's not like we want to control the betting engine and the PAM, which enables us to control, for example, we can integrate other API feeds in addition to simple bet. Now we're not fully reliant upon anybody other than ourselves, right? The other suppliers will power features and ancillary products, but the core product development is now fully within the hands of the Betr team.
I mean, the amount of counts you're going to get per month, because we're going to get to, we only have a couple more minutes, but like your first big media move, other than you doing your own shows, but you brought the Cavenders on, correct?
Yeah. So we brought in the Cavender twins, who basically, stopped themselves from continuing their basketball career of like going to the WNBA to work with us and to create content through our network to launch a show amongst other things. And they have this massive presence in the basketball world and this like superstar potential and power. And so we're bringing in, other talent as we speak, as well as the Cavender twins, and just continuing to grow the network of bigger stars and then stars that, we're developing through our content ecosystem from the ground floor. So super excited to have them on board, but they're definitely an amazing asset for the company.
Okay, I have to ask this question. People keep asking me to ask you it today. Derek, your buddy Derek, the picks guys that can't be fired. How's he doing today with Nate Diaz? But like I have a theory, but what's your answer about Derek?
Man,
come on, give us an exclusive. Come on.
I mean, Derek's crazy, and everyone's like, "Oh, Jake told him to do this in the press conference." I swear on everything. I don't
really.
I don't tell him anything. He's out of his mind 99% of the time, but this kid has star power. Like the amount of people that texted me and DM'd me after that situation were like, I don't know what this kid, like if he's in his right mind, but something about this kid is special, and it's true. But he's an example of someone that we've built through our talent ecosystem that now has this like superstar potential and has built up a crazy fan base. And it's just really funny to see.
I know that
the kids
it's crazy, but I know it was like organic, and it happens. Like you guys don't do like an American Idol type show where you say who's going to be the next, better. Like, have you guys thought of doing that and bringing in more guys like him? I don't know how you pick that. I mean, I don't know how you do that. That's like impressive. I mean,
no, we've definitely thought of doing like some sort of public search for like people to be involved in Betr, and I think that actually is something on the horizon. But we also have an eye for this. Like that was what was my first actually start in venture capital and business was a social media label where like I identified talent and helped grow their brand into the millions of followers. And so I've just naturally like always known how to do this. And it's something that I'm good at and like passionate about. And we've kind of just taken some of those things and plugged it into the Betr world, and it's taking off. So
we should have moved to Puerto Rico. I could have learned like an ounce from you and then made Benzinga way bigger. But before we finish, like you guys have top investors, Silicon Valley, what have you, from Travis Scott to, I'm just naming celebrities, Des Bryant. But are you guys looking to raise more money? Is there anything that we could do to get the word out other than get more accounts opened up with you or watch the media sites, all your different shows? And I by the way, if someone's listening right now on YouTube, go to Jake's page, like your YouTube about, I think it was the Betr YouTube. Your first video about Betr describes it perfectly. You've stuck to your mission since day one of building this company. I'm sure you've had little gyrations, but you talk about the media company, you talk about the application. It's the best story of Betr if you want to hear the first video you made. But is there anything that Joey or Jake that we can do to help get the word out? I mean, the company it's going to be hockey stick growth. As long as you guys execute and can take money and deposit and make it work, like you're saying, the Robin Hood way. But then again, don't stop trading in GameStop, because then you guys are it'll be like every day on TV. But is there anything we can do to help you in any way? Okay, and in regards to the different states you're in, is that the biggest challenge right now for growth? Like I know because I wanted to use like do you have to hire a team to do that?
I think
third party?
Look, with respect to going live in additional states, I mean, you brought up some of the other M&A that was announced earlier this week. I think similarly to how we're developing our media, audience and
Yep.
talent network and building our product experience, we want to be very methodical and opportunistic with respect to how we go about state by state expansion. Pretty much all of the market access deals that we've entered into are cash light, featuring an equity component, aligning incentives with ourselves and the partners that we align ourselves with. And we're getting market access deals that are anywhere from a 75 to a 95% discount against peak market, which enables us to invest in our product and invest in our media. So I think we have enough market access in the current set of states that we have to do what I just said we're going to do, which is prove that we will have the best unit economics in the category. And when we prove that, we're going to go out and put a couple $100 million to work and pour gasoline on the fire that we're assembling right now.
And then maybe Jake can get his brother to join your team on this one,
I'll let
'cause
Jake comment on that.
he's a
Maybe,
you know,
maybe.
sponsor. Okay, and last question. Your company is unreal, and on the side note, this probably won't be on the live feed, but if there's room for a smidgen, I know some guys that would like to invest, like this guy. Okay, so but seriously, like real money. Jake, how is it go? Okay, now Aaron, you can go back to. You don't have to cut that out. I mean, you cut that out. Now we're going to the last.
No,
question.
appreciate the conviction against what we're doing, and we could talk after.
It makes so much sense. It's how I got Benzinga to sell these subscriptions by just writing content, and then people. This is like 10 years ago, and it makes so much. What you're doing is the way it should be. I mean, look at the cost to acquire a customer for MGM, and even all these places have buying ads like crazy, and you have Jake here and the whole network, and it's entertaining. You got the twins on, and I know you have 5 people up your sleeve that are going to be incredible. That everyone's gonna be like, holy shit, how'd this Betr come about? We should have bought them when they started, and then soon you're gonna have $1 billion valuation, and just like Prime's gonna sell for something like that, you guys are gonna either sell for that before you go public, or you're gonna go public in 3 to 4 years. That's what I see. I don't know. I mean, but so final question, Jake. How's it going training for the Nate Diaz fight? Is it when you have a company to run like Betr and your social following, is it a lot of stress for you? I appreciate you doing the interview, but like just a day in the life of like how you manage your time, I guess would be.
Yeah, no, it's definitely really, really stressful, to be honest. I think I do a good job of managing it. Sometimes I don't, but but lots of meditation and an amazing team. So obviously we have the Betr team, but I think my own team is like 15 or 16, 17 people maybe, just here out in Puerto Rico. So I can't do it by myself, but I pop in the things that I'm best at, and I'm very efficient with my time. And definitely when I have a fight scheduled, boxing comes first. But I say it's boxing, Betr, and sleep, and that's my life pretty much. But the boxing, focusing on the boxing thing makes everything else in the ecosystem bigger. But the training is going really well, and very, very excited, very prepared, filled with this like vengeance that I've never had before, and this motivation that I have never had before coming off.
Why do you have it?
Just from losing, and knowing and wanting to come back even stronger and better, and switched up everything in my team from a coaching standpoint on the boxing side of things, and that has been already a massive, massive game changer. So excited to show everyone my new skills on August 5th.
Well, you've been proving people wrong your entire life, from how you grew up poor to what you've done now from being hamburger helpers. And I mean, that's what you grew up. I mean, unless you were joking on that.
Poor. I wouldn't say poor, but definitely not poor, but
not wealthy, maybe.
Yeah.
Not wealthy. You grew up happy, but just not wealthy like you are today. But what you built from Ohio, you didn't come from LA. Ohio, just in Ohio, Midwest town. We're in Michigan, so Midwest town. One of our investors owns the Cavs, and so Midwest guy, build what you've built, and now you got Betr that's about to take over the world in sports betting way. It's an amazing story. I want to thank Joey, Jake, and then Michael Goldberg for helping us get this scheduled. Good luck, and I'll let you go back to training. But thank you guys again, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, man.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you, Jason. Take care.
You too. Be in touch with you, Joey. Talk to you guys later.
Thank you, gentlemen. If you guys, oh man.
All right. How about that? We decided we were starting with a heavy hitting lineup. We meant it literally in that sense. We have heavy hitters going all day. Again, if you're just tuning in, the reason why we're putting on this event is because we want to bring you these cutting edge industries. We want to give you the inside peek. As the everyday investor, it's not often you get to hear from executives. You get to hear from the people who are driving the industry in all day. Next 2 hours, we're going to be giving you that inside peek behind the curtain. We've already mentioned that the stocks are up 20% this year. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my colleague, Chris Catchy, onto the stream with us.
Hey, what's going on, Luke? Yeah, speaking of heavy hitters, I'm excited for this next interview. I have the privilege and honor working with Jason Robbins, the co-founder and CEO of DraftKings. That's ticker DKNG, one of the biggest sports betting companies out there. So yeah, if we're ready for Jason here. Hey, Jason, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So Jason, I want to get started with, this cool event that we have going on in the background. We are actually right around the 5-year anniversary of the overturning of PASPA. Can you just share about why this was so important and kind of how this sports betting market in the U.S. began, and then maybe a look ahead at where we're going with some of these new states coming online?
Well, the sports betting market in the U.S. began, a long time ago, and even the online market began a long time ago because for decades prior to PASPA being overturned, were tens of millions of Americans betting mostly through offshore illegal operators. And New Jersey, which had brought a case to say, look, there was this federal law called PASPA, of course, that said no state could launch sports betting outside of those, Nevada being really the only one that had it. Jersey brought the lawsuit, it got overturned, and it was off to the races. Now, for us, it was a really important thing. We had just come off of an attempted merger with FanDuel, got blocked by the FTC. And just a couple of weeks after, we're trying to figure out what are we going to do next, we found out that the Supreme Court was taking up the case. We didn't find out till almost a year later that it actually ended up ended up invalidating the law, the PASPA law. But we knew that there was a chance that that could be the case, and it would open up this massive market opportunity for DraftKings. So we went to work pretty much right away and figured out without any prior real experience how to build a sports book. And we ended up being the first ones to launch an online sports book outside of Nevada. We launched in New Jersey in August of 2018. And now since then, there's almost 24 states that have passed laws, and 21, which we're in, that are up and operating for online sports books. So it's been really fast and really exciting. And I think the best days of growth still lie ahead of us.
Love that. So, Jason, one of the recent new state launches was Massachusetts. Now, you and I spoke recently about how DraftKings actually, kind of kicked out swinging there in Massachusetts. Tell us about how you're able to be so successful in states right at launch, and why Massachusetts is so important to the company.
Well, we're in 21 states now, and we're a very analytic company. We test everything. So we've had quite a few data points to optimize over, and I think really have just totally honed. Not that there's always room for optimization, but I think we really honed our state launch playbooks. I feel very good about us having just a model that we can go to when new states launch that we feel can confidently deliver really successful customer acquisition at very attractive CACs that have very good payback periods. So feel very good about that. I think with the national advertising and just general brand awareness that's come with DraftKings and really the industry, we're seeing these new states ramp faster. So Ohio, which we launched in January, we acquired about 6% of the adult population in the first 59 days. Comparably, we were at less than half of that 6 months in New Jersey, which was our first state. So just much faster ramp up. Massachusetts was even bigger. We had, I think, partly because Massachusetts, like Ohio, had a lot of the same tailwinds behind it, but also Massachusetts is where our company's headquartered. And so I think we had a very effective campaign pointing out that we were a local company. And I've lived here long enough that I know New England, we like to buy our own brands that are, New England centric and uniquely New England. So we felt like we would have a lot of customers that message resonated with. And so far it's been effective, and we've seen really good early results.
That's awesome. And speaking of really good results, Jason, DraftKings recently reported quarterly financial results. Now, part of being a publicly traded company now is, of course, you've got analysts and investors out there with their own expectations. So DraftKings was able to beat those estimates from analysts and also move the needle closer to profitability. So talk to us a little bit about what DraftKings is doing to get closer to profitability and why that's so important for you and the company.
Well, I think first, every company to be self-sufficient and to ultimately achieve what it wants to achieve long-term has to become profitable. And based on a variety of conditions, both sort of market-driven and conditions that are specific to the company and the industry it operates in, there's a time that it makes sense to really start to focus more on what that path looks like and how to maximize the potential of the profitability once it gets there. So for us, that really started about 16 months ago, where we really began to focus on cost heavily. I think that's really helped because over the past 12 months or so, we've cut hundreds of millions of dollars of cost that we've not only been able to cut, but also to do so while simultaneously growing and producing, incredible revenue performance, as you noted, well above what we expected to see. So, that's something I'm very proud of ourselves, doing. I think that it's easy to focus on one thing. It's hard to do both at the same time. And we really emphasize that that's the expectation, that we can't sacrifice one for the other, that we can't say, look, we're in cost cutting mode and maybe revenue growth is going to slow a little bit, that we had to continue to press our feet on both, of the gas pedals for those things. And that it was very not only possible, but actually we felt, and I think we've started to really get results that prove that they actually ironically help each other. That the more efficient that you become, the more that you really focus on, just being objective analytically about what do I need and what's the most important, it actually leads you to not just cut things, but to also really understand where you should be making investments and to double down in those areas. And I think it gives a great source of clarity to the team to say, this is the critical stuff that matters and this other stuff isn't as important. That allows a focus of your people. And so I think that's really played out. And I think there's really broad buy-in throughout the company. There's a few skeptics when we first said, hey, this is how we think it's all going to work. But I think there's broad buy-in across the company now that, yeah, that's accurate. That the more that we focus on becoming efficient, it actually helps us grow faster. It helps us serve our customers better. It helps us serve our employees better. And really, that's what it's all about.
So part of the sports betting summit is, to interview several players in the sports betting market. And I mean, we know that the sports market is highly competitive, right? Players out there want to win the game. We're going to hear from some of your competitors today. Can you tell us some of the differentiating factors that DraftKings has against those competing companies in the sports betting and iGaming space?
Well, I think for us, it starts with the customer and really understanding what the customer wants and how to serve the customer in a unique way and in the best way. And then that sort of naturally moves to the product. So we've really invested a lot in our product over the past several years. I believe now that across most sports, we have a broader offering of markets, more things to bet on. We have the most competitive pricing in the industry, I believe, and we also have really high uptimes. There was a recent study that was published that showed that we had significantly higher market uptimes, meaning, markets, especially as you get live in games, get pulled down as data comes in, and wait a minute, that line's no longer good. There was an independent study we actually didn't even know was being conducted, but really happy to see the results that showed that we had just significantly higher market uptime, which, isn't something that's easy to advertise and talk about, but it's customer experience. There's nothing more frustrating when you go to try to make a bet and the thing sort of grays out, you can't do it, and then the line changes on you. You're like, what happened? And so, really that's one of the many elements that we've talked about of things that along the customer journeys are just critical to, over time, building an impression amongst customers that this is a better experience, that this is something that I'm enjoying more, I'm having less frustrating experience. And in a regulated industry, regulations often create friction for customers. So it's actually, we look at that as an opportunity. If we can figure out how do we, of course, always following and abiding by all regulations, always really making sure responsible game areas like that, anti-money laundering or investment areas, that we're always, at the gold standard level. But then how do we find creative ways within that constraint set, within that box, to reduce friction and to make it a more pleasant experience for customers? So things like having higher market uptime, for example. So I think that that's really been a focus area of us. Service has been a big focus area of us. We've brought in, great people on the leadership side who, actually the person who leads our customer service department is also leading the company-wide initiative around customer centricity. So just shows you where his mindset is and how linked those two things are. But really, I think that's the core of everything. And then there's so many things we could spend the rest of the time talking about that you do from there. But I think it starts really with the customer in mind. What does the customer want? How do we create good experiences? How do we eliminate bad experiences? And how do we make sure we have a great product that stands up against and is really superior for whatever you want to do to others out there? And on the casino side, that's been the same story. We've done a ton of our own in-house content. So we have many unique games that you can't find anywhere else. We've also really invested in technology. We just launched our first in-house built live dealer game, Auto Roulette, which we're very excited about. And that's part of an R&D project that's been going for over a year now. I think our UI, everything we just constantly test and try to optimize. We have great cross-sell between products. But really, again, comes down to how do you make sure that you're getting the customer what they want. We don't force people into things. We don't push people into things. We just learn about the customer through the experiences that they have with us and try to best serve them in the way that we can.
I want to follow up with the cross-selling and the iGaming. I know when you and I spoke recently, DraftKings also has partnered with Twin Spires in horse racing. We, of course, had the Kentucky Derby recently. Can you just talk a little bit about why it's important to offer some of these different things like horse race betting, iGaming to your existing customers, do that cross-selling to your daily fantasy users, and any initial numbers or commentary on how successful the Kentucky is for DraftKings?
Well, first off, I think very similar to what I was saying, we have a widest variety of markets and the most things to bet on goes for other types of betting. The simple concept is if you're a customer and you want to bet on something, you could love DraftKings, you could love whatever service you're using, but if they don't have the thing you want to bet on, you're going to go find it somewhere else. So we think we have to have everything that people want to bet on. It has to be a good experience when they're doing it. And that was really the thesis behind launching Horse. There's a substantial portion of the audience that really, especially on days like the Kentucky Derby, but even on other days throughout the year, wants to be able to bet on horses. We've been getting inquiries for years from our customer base on, why can't I do this on DraftKings? When are you going to have this? So it was really important to us to launch and have a product we felt was good out there in the market in time for this year's Kentucky Derby. And the results have been astounding. Our app was #1 ranked in the sports category. We've never even achieved that, I think, with our core sports betting apps, or at least not that I can recall. And we did that with the horse racing app, which was pretty awesome on Kentucky Derby Day. And we haven't released any specific numbers, but that's obviously out there publicly. And I think, you can kind of draw your own conclusions, but you don't get there unless you have a lot of downloads. So we had a pretty successful customer acquisition day, and I'm really excited about the future of DK Horse. We haven't even really begun to integrate it in the way that we're going to. So the fact that with a totally standalone experience, we've been able to get this kind of momentum, gives me a lot of confidence that there's even more upside there.
Last question here, Jason. I want to talk just briefly on diversification. We know that DraftKings, there's interest in sports media and podcasts, and also you've dabbled into, NFTs. Talk a little bit about the diversification efforts while still being mindful of getting closer to profitability.
Well, we're talking about diversification across two dimensions. One is geography, which right now our focus is on launching new states. Eventually it will be international, but right now it is on launching new states. And then secondly is vertical differentiation, which can consist of things that are sort of natural, evolutions like horse racing we just talked about, and also things that maybe may seem, more like adjacencies, but not necessarily part of the core gaming category like media or NFTs. But again, it all kind of starts from the same place, which is the customer. We look at what are the things that our customers are doing, where are they spending their time, what types of products do we think, based on our relationship with the customer, they would enjoy us offering, and they think we would have, the right brand and the right fit with, and would therefore, try us out and give us a shot. And that's really how we got into some of these new categories now. We're being very careful about the way we're investing there. We're making sure that these are not highly capital consumptive, that these are things that, quickly reach profitability and can grow on their own funding from there. And so that's really the goal of these new verticals we launch. But again, it's about serving the customer, and we have customers that are consuming sports content and, feel like, especially when it comes to things related to betting or stats, that we're a credible source of that sort of content. So we want to be there. And we have customers that are buying NFTs and playing games, and so launching Rainmakers, which is the first NFT-based fantasy game that we launched. That was something that we felt like would resonate really well too. We have a fantasy customer base, so if you take that group and say, okay, who wants to try a different twist on it? Maybe you also add in that audience that likes NFTs. Felt like there was a good market there for us. So that's really the thinking behind it and the philosophy behind with which we fund and build these things.
Love it. Well, Jason, we could chat all day on various topics, but until next time, always my pleasure to talk to you. And again, DraftKings, DKNG is the ticker. Jason Robbins, co-founder, chairman, and CEO of DraftKings. Jason, thanks so much for your time today at our Sports Betting Summit.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, Chris.
How about that, Luke?
I was going to say, we promised a pretty big lineup. We had Joey Levy, Jake Paul to start. Then we go to DraftKings. I think we're delivering on our promise.
I think absolutely, right? I know our audience wanted heavy hitters, and we've got heavy hitters. I mean, I've been playing daily fantasy sports games with DraftKings for years, sports betting app, and several of the other companies that are going to be on the show today. I mean, anyone who follows the sports betting space knows who the big names are, and they're right here on Benzinga today.
All right, so let me ask you this, Chris. What stood out from the conversation that you just had? What are some of the big takeaways in your mind?
I think the key is profitability, right? I mean, I cover DraftKings. I've covered the stock for a while, and they blew out the numbers in the quarter. And the thing that the analysts were most impressed with was that they're moving that needle and getting closer to profit, and it could be happening sooner than later. They raised their guidance for the full year. I mean, you heard Jason say that in Massachusetts, where they just launched, they had huge share right away. Years ago, it took a while to build up that market share, and now they're coming into these new states and dominating from the start. I think that's incredibly impressive.
Yeah. One of the conversations that I'm interested in having in just a few minutes here is about the marketing spends, right? When you talk about the pathway to profitability, marketing spend is one of those bigger factors. So I'd be eager to dig into some of the channels, like what channels for user acquisition are going to be the most lucrative and which have the most future.
Yeah, I liked hearing about DK Horse, right? I think there's a whole audience out there that, does horse racing betting. And in order to do that, you really had to be on some of these other platforms like Twin Spires with Churchill Downs. And now DraftKings is offering horse racing to their users. So could that pull in some more users without spending millions of dollars on TV commercials? It's quite possible. There's that huge overlap. I mean, let's face it, DraftKings and FanDuel really got their start, and that helped from having that existing user base from daily fantasy sports. And they've been able to cross-sell sports betting to them and now other platforms as well.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Chris. Jason, if you're still listening, appreciate it. And without further ado, I would like to keep us clipping. I want to welcome onto the stream. I actually get to host one of these conversations, Chris, not to make you jealous.
Yes,
but Charles Gillespie, CEO and co-founder of gambling.com. Can we please get Charles onto the screen here?
What's up, guys?
Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
Very well, Luke. How are you?
We're doing well. We've got a lot to follow up with, and based on some of our preparations, I think that the two of us will be able to deliver. We start off with Betr and Jake Paul. We just heard from DraftKings. You sit in a much different part of the market. You don't have a book. You're the connector, is I like to think about it in my mind. Could you just explain where exactly in the value chain gambling.com sits?
Sure. So, within the global online gambling industry, there is an enormous focus on player acquisition. Jason was talking about this, and all the CEOs of all the big operators will talk about this. They need to put players into the tank. It's the fuel that powers the entire business. So they are super focused on acquiring as many players as they can, and it makes loads of sense because they've spent many millions, sometimes hundreds of millions, or even $1 billion on their platform to deliver their product, and each incremental customer doesn't cost them very much at all to service. They've already kind of taken all these costs to create their product. So they have spent many of them have spent great fortunes on acquiring players in many different ways. But one of the most effective ways to do that is to only pay for performance, essentially only pay when your partner actually delivers that customer to you, all the way to your door. They've registered, they've deposited, they've played. And that's what we do at gambling.com Group. So we're performance marketers, we're affiliates. There's a couple of different ways to explain this, but much in the same way as like a hotels.com would help people find a hotel room, we help online players find online gambling companies, and in particular in the US, differentiate between regulated and legal online gambling companies like Jason's and the ones that are not. Clearly the industry has come out of the shadows, and not everybody understands all the nuances there. So we do play a very key role in helping people find their way to the regulated and onshore sites.
So Charles, tell me if this is a fair summary. But basically the piece that you've gotten very good at is getting mindshare of consumers who want to open the gambling accounts, and then matching those consumers with the right book or casino for them. Is that a fair way to think about it?
That's exactly it. So we're very good at two things: producing content about online gambling. So we know all these online gambling companies inside out. We meet them face to face regularly. We know everything about their products, payments, slots, bonuses, odds, whatever. All of it. We've got that information, and we publish it in very easy to use ways across all our different websites. We publish not just gambling.com, but about 50 other websites as well. So we have bookies.com. We've got a lot of state sites in the US. Think betohio.com, betmassachusetts.com, which play leading roles in each one of these new state launches. So we're great at publishing all that content. And they're also really very good at digital marketing for that content, in particular search. So if you search for one of a great many different things related to the online gambling industry in the US or the UK or Ireland or any of the markets we're active in, it's not just the US, then you more than likely find one or more of our websites in the search engine results page. And in that way, we capture a lot of this high intent traffic, people that not only are they looking to set up a new sportsbook account, but they're looking to do that right now.
So Charles, we've talked about the U.S. and maybe we haven't explicitly talked about it, but I think the U.S. market is what's in people's minds, given the previous conversations that we had. But you've been around since 2006. Tell us, what have you been doing until these past couple years when this became a big business in the U.S. And what that history does for you. Yeah.
So we started this business in 2006. Myself and the co-founder, Kevin McChrystal, were from North Carolina. Both grew up in Charlotte. Both went to UNC. Met on the bus in like 5th grade or something. So when we started the business, we wanted to do something proper and legal and regulated in the industry. But back in 2006, there was no regulated online gambling in the United States. So we left. We realized we just couldn't build a business in the United States in this industry at the time. And what ended up happening is we became one of the largest companies in the entire sector based on our growth and performance in Europe, mainly in the UK and in Ireland. So we built a business in Europe. Our largest office today is in Dublin. But we've now got offices all across the US, Malta, Latin America, other places in Europe, and it's really a global business. So, obviously online gambling has kind of come to the forefront in the US in the last couple of years. So it feels like it's a new industry in the US, but it's actually an old industry. The UK regulated online gambling nearly 20 years ago. The first bets online were taken 25 years ago. So it's an interesting industry where there's aspects of it which are showing some signs of kind of maturity, if you will. But because of the situation in the US where regulation was delayed as long as it was, essentially until 2018, more or less, you've had the industry kind of explode on the scene in the US. So, as Jason was saying, so many states have regulated, but you've also had a number of online gambling industry companies go public in the United States, either through IPO or SPAC deals. And that has brought the business and the industry to the forefront of the investment community.
So appreciate that context, Charles. And I want to talk about the North American business. So in 2021, gambling.com did $42 million of revenue. $7.5 million of that was from North America. So that's 2021. 2022, the business did $77 million of revenue. 36 million of that was from in North America. So year over year, you went from 7.5 million in North America to 36 million in North America.
That's right.
Monster growth, obviously. Tell us a little bit about what we can expect from North America, and what some of these key drivers are for future growth there.
Yeah. So last year, North America was our largest reporting segment. It was larger than the UK and Ireland. For 2023, we do expect North America to be an absolute majority of group revenue. North America, of course, includes all of North America. So we also have a very nice Canadian business to go along with everything happening in the States. Last year, you saw quite a few new state launches. And at the beginning of this year, of course, you had Ohio and Massachusetts. We do expect Kentucky to launch toward the end of the year, possibly this side of the year. But all of the guidance that we have put out to the market specifically excludes all new state launches. And we will not add in any effect from a new state launch until we have absolute clarity on when that state is indeed going to launch. So there's nothing in there now for Kentucky. We are quite hopeful that North Carolina will regulate in the next couple of weeks. There's committee hearings happening, I think, right this second. And we put the odds on North Carolina legislatively succeeding in regulating sports betting to be pretty high. It only failed by one vote last year. And if North Carolina goes through, we'd expect a launch at the very end of the year, early next year as well. Again, not in the guidance, and something that we'll have to add into the guidance if that happens.
And Charles, you brought up a really interesting point when we were doing some of our preparation that I want to dig into a little bit further. A lot of the business in North America thus far has been on the sportsbook side of things. There's also the casino opportunity. But could you give us, I guess, sort of the distinction between the two for those who may not be aware, and then also what that means for gambling.com?
Absolutely. So yeah, the narrative in the United States right now is all about sports betting because that's the first wave of regulation. You've had 25 odd states regulate sports betting, and politically it's a much easier sell than online casino games. Online casino, you really only have 3 states which have regulated: New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. But to the extent any other states regulate online casino, which we very much expect to happen, that will dramatically expand the TAM, and much more so than a new state adding sports betting for a couple of reasons. One, there's a lot of big states left that have not added online casino. Think New York. And online casino players are roughly 2 times more valuable than a sports bettor. And then the American online casino players tend to be some of the most valuable in the entire world. So when you think about how essentially the margins of a sports betting player versus online casino, the online casino is a much better business. Online sports betting is much more complicated and lower margin, and you see the same effect in a land-based casino. If you walk into a casino in Vegas, the floor of slots will be 5 or 10 times the size of the sports book, and that's because they're investing where the money is at.
Awesome. Thank you, Charles. That makes sense. And I'll say, as a resident of Michigan, I know the draw of some of the casino games. More on that later, maybe. I want to talk about advertising budgets. We heard Jason at DraftKings mention it. Profitability is a focus for DraftKings. It's a focus for a lot of players in the space. Marketing and advertising has been a really big line item when we're looking at the expenses of some of these businesses. If there is a pullback on advertising, how does that impact you?
Yeah. There's already been a massive pullback on marketing and advertising. Jason was just talking about it. You've heard other CEOs of the large operators talking about it. Hundreds of millions of dollars of sponsorships are not being renewed. And that's it. On the surface, you would think that maybe that would be a headwind for us. Actually, it's not. What these operators all want is ROI, and not just ROI, but ROI they can attribute, that they can track. And when they spend money on non-performance marketing, TV, radio, outdoor, at best, they use surveys or kind of crude tools to estimate the ROI on that investment. And they never really know. Whereas when they work with companies like ours, every single click is tracked. So we know exactly how many clicks we sent them, what that traffic looked like. We understand if they registered, if they deposited, if they played a little, played a lot, played sports, played casino. And in that way, they can perfectly track the ROI on that investment that they have made into our traffic. And the nature of most of the commercial models between the affiliate companies and the operators is such that the affiliates really don't get paid until we've already delivered the players. So even from a cash flow perspective, the operators are not even really paying us until the value has been created for them. And because of that, there's been no slackening in demand for our services in the United States, despite this push to profitability by the online gambling operators themselves.
Awesome. Charles, I want to pivot a little bit. I've got one final question for you. You are a content-driven, content-heavy business, just like we are. I see AI creeping into a lot of our workflows here at Benzinga. Has AI become a practice of gambling.com at all? Is it helping you with efficiencies anywhere, helping you drive top line? But yeah, AI, part of the story or not?
Yeah, actually a big part of the story. So we embraced machine learning years ago, and mainly in terms of helping to match operators to visitors. So it is in our interest, and it is also in our visitors' interest for us to pair them off with the online gambling company that they are most likely to succeed at registering, depositing, and playing at. If we send someone somewhere and they fail to register, deposit, and play, well, clearly they did not get what they were looking for. So we do a lot of machine learning and data science, number crunching, et cetera, to figure out which operator will actually be the best one for each visitor that comes to our websites. And that has really improved the customer experience on the websites because people are getting what they want more often than not. And it's also, helps us economically, is because the performance of the entire kind of engine gets better. We've also started developing our own open AI plugin, which we plan to deploy as soon as we buff off all the rough edges. And then we've seen all kinds of efficiency inside the business. We've got all the developers with ChatGPT accounts that want them. We've got all these kind of co-pilot tools which help developers produce code more effectively than before. that doesn't make people 10% more effective. It might make them 10 times more effective. I mean, the difference is absolutely incredible. And naturally, as the leader of the business, I've got a decision to make. Do I ship 10 times as much product, or do I cut costs? And we're builders. We like the fact that we have extra capacity in the business through these tools, and we plan to utilize it to help our customers. So we're kind of doubling down on product and development and doing everything we can to expand the business.
Excellent. Well, Charles, thank you very much for joining us today. The company is gambling.com. The portfolio of domains and assets goes far beyond just that one URL. The ticker is GAMB. Again, Charles, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Luke.
All right. I said we'd be able to continue delivering on our slew of heavy hitters here at the Titans of Sports Betting Summit. I hope that I came through for you all. The chat is there to empower you. If there's questions that you want to see from speakers that we have throughout the day, there's angles that you're thinking about, let us know. We are reading, we are watching. Again, our role at Benzinga is to be on the cutting edge of these developing industries. We've seen incredible stock performance out of these stocks in 2023, more than doubling the S&P 500. And we're giving you all the inside look, right? That's our job. Our job is to give you the inside look. Your job is to keep our minds on what questions we should be asking and where we should be taking these conversations. Next up, we're about to hear from BetMGM and FanDuel. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome the moderator of our discussion, Jeffrey Camies, Chief Investment Strategist of the iBet Sports Betting and Gaming ETF, onto the stream with us. Jeffrey, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. This is a great show so far. I know my kids, this younger generation, you started off with Betr. My kids were really interested in it. And when I told them it was, with Paul, he said they were like, oh, I want to watch that. I'm not sure I want to watch you, Dad, but I want to see what he has to say.
All right. Well, hey, at least you're able to entertain them with something.
Right.
Awesome. All right, Jeffrey, I'll turn it over to you to welcome our panel onto the screen.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, we have an exciting show here. We have Adam Greenblatt, who's the CEO of BetMGM, and we also have Christian Ganetsky, who's the president of FanDuel Group. And I would say, I want to start this off with really quickly saying, I've been in this industry. I started a fantasy sports company in 1994. Flat file database. It was called Dr. Stats Fantasy Sports. I've been in it for a long time. The evolution is fantastic. And I want to throw this basically both out to both of you and say, what have you seen since we had PASPA overturned? When I had my company, it was really just fantasy sports, but now we've seen this evolution from the daily fantasy sports player into online gaming. So what have you both seen in the last 5 years now since we've had that overturned? Adam?
Okay, great. Well, firstly, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I know this is our debut. Hopefully this becomes a regular feature of our annual calendar. I think the way to look at it is, and it's come up on previous panels actually, the way I would look at it is, what did we expect and what were surprises? And so we expected the market was going to be huge and there'd be great support for sports betting and iGaming, and there has been. But for me, what was really the surprise was the pace of adoption. And I know you've talked about what's on the horizon for new states in sports betting, but the pace of adoption has really been staggering. There was one surprise that really just blew through our, for giggles, we looked at the business model we created on establishing BetMGM, way back in 2018, and the contrast between what we expected to transpire and what's actually played out has been remarkable. And the other thing that I would call out is just the value potential of iGaming. We are live. BetMGM is live in five states and jurisdictions, including Ontario up in Canada. In the states that we're live, we believe we are the market leader, and as has been mentioned, the player values and just the depth of the market has been exceptional. And so I believe as we look to the future, there's really some exciting potential there.
I agree with you. Christian, what are you seeing from FanDuel's side of that, in that same perspective about the growth of the marketplace, how fast it's changed? And I think this is one of the industries where the roadmap lasts about 3 weeks and then you tear it up and it goes another direction.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeffrey. It's great to be here. Look, it's been the longest and the fastest 5 years of my life, I think, since PASPA was repealed. Look, it's hard to, you know, things always make sense looking backward, but it's hard to remember. I think, thinking through the eyes of FanDuel, in the summer of 2018, it was certainly not a foregone conclusion that you would see, what were then called and still are often called, the DFS companies and FanDuel and DraftKings as being the leaders in sports betting. I think that it was a real open question. I mentioned recently there were a lot of investor jokes at the time about it's going to be interesting to see how all 20 companies claiming they're going to have 15% market share pull that off. So I think it's, seeing the way the market's developed, I think probably a little different than Adam in that, in my role at FanDuel at the time, I was really close to the lobbying efforts and continue to oversee government relations work today. And so I'm a little, specific states when they came on the specific timeline, some differences there, but I'm not that shocked that we've gotten the map as opened up as we have. What's really surprised us, I think, is just we knew the U.S. would be a big market. We knew if we could get states, it would be a big market. It's just much bigger than anyone at FanDuel was forecasting. I mean, very similar to Adam in that regard. I think the value per user, the percentage of penetration of the adult population in our existing states, which is happening faster and faster as we become closer and closer to national businesses as opposed to state by state and regional businesses. I think we are a little further along, and I think also more bullish today than we were 5 years ago about the potential of the market. We're still growing in our quote unquote mature states like New Jersey and Pennsylvania, where we've been around for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and I do want to get into a little bit of the lobbying. I live in California, and so I got to see that campaign firsthand, and I have some input
Apologies.
on that as well. Yeah, I know. I was rooting hard for you, by the way. And I actually had to explain my very educated friends that it was not a ballot to allow children to gamble. That was not what was intended. So I do want to get into that a little bit because I have some ideas for you. But maybe jump out and tell me about how the Flutter FanDuel partnership, how you work together, how you built your early lead in the U.S. market, and how that continues. How do you see that shaping up in the future?
Sure. I think we feel good about the position we're in. We feel like it wasn't a fluke. We feel like it was earned. But we very much understand that doesn't mean tomorrow is promised to any of us, and that we have to continue to earn it every day. I do think, some of the things you'll hear a lot of people talk about are true, right? In FanDuel, you had a sports brand that had hundreds of millions of dollars invested in it, perhaps not all invested so wisely. Our ad campaigns in 2015 were, had a mixed effect for our business. But we had established that brand. We had a database full of DFS players who had shown a propensity to spend money on sports entertainment. And, that database has proved very valuable. And we had a lot of years experience of, marketing a B2C online business around sports, which I think was probably a little bit of an overlooked advantage that we brought to the market on day one. Then I think you combine that, that said, we had no sportsbook expertise. So I don't think a lot of people were betting on FanDuel to be a big winner. But when we, were acquired by then Paddy Power Betfair, now Flutter, that brought us decades of experience operating in markets around the world. We're first to market in the United States with the same game parlay offering because the sports bet business in Australia, which is part of the Flutter group, had built that product 10 years ago and had been refining it, for years. And so we've really been able to leverage the expertise. We have a ton of folks in our business that have come to us from Flutter companies around the world that have a level of expertise and acumen that's really helpful. And then, I think part of our secret sauce that's, sort of out there for everybody to see is, we are a pure play online gaming company. This is sort of all we do. And so I do think there is a level of, drive to succeed There's some humble origins on the FanDuel side, and I think the cultures between Flutter and FanDuel have been a really good fit. And so I think, it's a combination of all of that kind of creates the alchemy. Long term, our product is going to have to be superior for us to maintain the lead that we have. And I think, so far, the sophistication of our risk and trading expertise that we get from Flutter, the extent of our markets, and our ability to kind of keep innovating on same game parlay and other aspects of the product, those are, I gave you kind of the nuts and bolts of what gave us an advantage at the beginning. I think the way to sustain it is really going to be through product in the long run.
Absolutely. And we're not going to really talk about it, but excited to hear about your listing in the US that's coming soon. I think that's great for the marketplace. I mean, we've been short of IPOs now. There are a lot of companies ready to go, I'm sure public, that we had a lot of these come public in 2019, 18, but we haven't seen any now because there have just been a dry up of IPOs in general. But Adam, I want to talk a little bit about profitability from the BetMGM perspective. And I think one of the ideas that I want to get through to this isn't all brick and mortar anymore. I think one of the things that makes this industry a little more recession proof. I know that the concept of recession proof, there's an idea that this is a recession proof industry, and it has proven to be during certain times. But I think the digitization and everything being digital now allows these companies, the higher profit margins now that we have these sunk costs in on this high-end software that's been built. Maybe talk a little bit about that and where you see BetMGM. I know we're looking at profitability here and EBITDA profitability here in the second half of 2023. So that's exciting to hear for investors. And, these young investors want to know what you see as the outlook for BetMGM in the future.
Yes, for sure. So I'll start with the guidance and then we develop from there. So the guidance we have, or our shareholders and we have given to the street, is revenue of $1.8 to $2 billion for this year, and move into profitability in the second half. So aiming to be profitable in the second half of 23. And look, part of that is the natural evolution of our business plan and the impact of a scaling business with positive unit economics and a fixed cost base, right? That's just the way the business plan evolves. As you stack, you keep some of your old customers, you put on new customers again and again. Each new customer brings a degree of marginal contribution, and you get to a certain scale, and off you go, all positive. But to be absolutely candid, some of the decisions that we are making this year are about that path to profitability. And frankly, our industry is tough. You got really high tax rates. I don't know if you saw today, Massachusetts, I think was Mass, decided against continuation of promo play deductions, which means, in practical terms, effective increase in tax rate.
Right?
And while we're not seeing the contagion risk that was so often spoken about after New York came to the market, it is, these things all make the threshold, the bar of profitability, that much more challenging. So we've talked about marketing. We haven't pulled back in dollar terms on marketing. The reality has been, though, that it's a bit like the peanut butter paste. You have to spread in until and unless all of your marketing is national, you've got more individual states to cover with the same dollars. So if the impact on a per state basis, unless you make some decisions about mix, is a net reduction in on the ground voice, if you like. So all of these dynamics are having an impact, but we're certainly on track for profitability as we get into the back end of this year, and then from then on, of course, should California decide to come on stream, that'll have a short-term impact.
And let's get into that a little bit, because that's exciting to me. And I'm, one of the California things, having lived in this state for almost 20 years now, I grew up in Chicago and Illinois, and there's legalized gambling there, and I've used the apps there. It's disappointing to me. And I think from a perspective of, I don't think people realize how much revenue the tribes generate here. And a lot of that is untaxed. Of course, most of it is. And so we just had Newsom sign another moratorium against card rooms. That draws in $1 billion. But California's gone from a state now that had a $25 billion surplus to now we're looking at a $25 billion deficit. and a lot of business outflow for state, the salt tax and all these other things. I think coming to 2024, California is going to be looking to generate revenue. And I think it's, it might be a different campaign. And I'll just throw that out to you. Either you, Christian, I know you have lobbying perspective, and Adam, if you guys want to add to that, but I'm interested in the states that are coming online that we still have challenges with, the tribes in both Florida and California, and Texas, which is wide open, but maybe the Attorney General might have something to say about that. But I think those tax revenues, especially in California, it's a different argument, I think, in 2024 than it was in 2022.
Yeah, I think that's true. I do. Look, I think we learned a lot in 2022. We had an operator coalition that worked closely together, worked well together. Adam's company was part of that from the beginning. The tribes in California have a special place with regard to gaming, and we recognize that. We appreciate it. I think our plan each step of the way, and our initiative, if you read it, was that the tribes would be the gatekeepers of mobile sports betting in California. You wouldn't be able to operate without a partnership with the tribe. The portions of the funds went to support tribal issues. That we always knew that was the path. I think what we learned along the way, and you have to start these campaigns and make a commitment to them well in advance of the time you get to actually get voters' attention. And I think it's fair to say that the larger tribes in the state kind of got to the point where they decided it was too soon for them. They weren't ready. They weren't that comfortable with our model as it turned out. And so, it was unprecedented in California politics to have $200 million spent in an opposition campaign. And it turns out it's very hard to win a campaign where you have that kind of spend. And so, had we had full foresight of the future and known that opposition spend was coming, we probably would have taken a different approach. But I think the decisions we made along the way were the right decisions at the time. And we learned a lot along the way. We had built relationships with some tribes along the way through that process. And I think now it's time to take a minute, take a pause, reflect a little bit. We are, very much trying to build relationships with the tribes. I still think that is the right path in California. That's the way we will get there, is through compromise. I'm a big believer in that. And I think there is a path where the citizens of California can win, the government can win on a tax revenue basis. It's something that's positive for the future for tribal communities, and provides real uplift to them, and gives people who want to bet on sports, the apps that they want to bet on, that they've come to know and love using in other states.
Well,
I believe that path exists.
I'm going to throw it over to you, Adam, one second. But I have friends who kind of grew up with Newsom and these different people in San Francisco, because I lived there for a long time. And my friend just said, just have to get Nancy Pelosi on board and you'll get it done. It used to be Willie Brown, but now it's Nancy Pelosi. So somebody's got to move into San Francisco, buy some commercial real estate, get into some commercial real estate where they have plenty of it. You can get it for 50 cents on the dollar, and just, get into her district and you'll be good, I think. Adam, what do you have to say about expansion? Maybe just talk about maybe Texas, or what's going on in Texas. And because I think Texas is super exciting. I mean, right now it would come on because there'd be no split. I think there's one tribe that has a casino operation in Texas, or maybe more, but it's very small. So the opening in Texas would be massive for the industry. It
is very small. I mean, the current gaming related activity is really around racing is the predominant player there. But this is, I know we're close on time, but the really optimistic development happened a few weeks ago, where in Texas, the draft bill for sports betting won a supermajority in the House. Now, it didn't go further, and then we ran out of time. And as you know, Texas is a biannual legislative session, so we will have to wait a couple of years now. But the momentum coming out of this most recent session gives us great confidence that we will, we'll do our best, but great confidence that success is attainable next session.
Absolutely. I want to throw one last thing out there, because this, as an investor, I go and talk to companies all the time and institutions, and a large what people talk about in this space all the time is really true. It's not true anymore, but they always want to bring up customer acquisition costs, which is an expense of the industry. But I want to talk about how we're kind of gone from that into more strategic partnerships. Christian, I'm in Vegas at least twice a month. I live down in Southern California, and I've been into, the FanDuel spot in Boyd's, and I know you guys have a great partnership. Talk about some of the either the sports teams partnerships or how the industry is changing into strategic partnerships from the customer acquisition cost, which gets you more exposure in a different way and maybe at a little bit of a less upfront cost.
Yeah, I think we think about our team and league partnerships, our sports team partnerships, and our market access partnerships they are acquisition vehicles, and we think about customer acquisition, but they're not the primary drivers of our customer acquisition. We think about, it's very important for us. Our ultimate goal is we would like FanDuel to be the American sportsbook of record, and if we're going to be that, and if we're going to help lead the category to a place where sports betting is endemic to the enjoyment of sports, right? It is considered, part and parcel of how Americans enjoy sports entertainment. We need to be inside the ropes in golf tournaments. We need to be, on the floor in NBA games. We need to be, visible at the biggest moments in sports and embraced by those sports. And so that's how we think about partnership. We think about, moving slowly and incrementally, advertising responsibly, working with these partners on responsible gaming initiatives, and sort of being good stewards of the industry. So we remain, integral, to the American sports landscape, because ultimately that's what's going to help, my company and Adams and our competitors long term, is to have the category really positioned, as aligned with sport as opposed to something that sits outside of it.
I agree. And I'll throw the same thing to you, Adam, if you can add some different perspective, or you're allowed to comment.
Yeah, look, without doubt, the elements of credibility by association and being seen as part of sports entertainment in the US is a reason for. As a counter to that, we are very focused. And I think, look, with this linking to the question earlier about path to profitability, we are very focused now on deal ROI. And so we are doing our best to measure both tangible and intangible benefits of a relationship, because having been through 5 years now, some of our early deals are coming up for renewal or expiring, coming up for renewal. And so we're taking a really tough look at some of those to assess, are we getting enough value? Can we achieve that halo effect that Christian talked about without incurring the cost, perhaps at some of the lower levels?
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And thanks for both being on. But I want to share one thing with the audience. When I started my fantasy sports company in 1994, and the reason I bring this up is because there's such a corollary here. This is a very nascent industry that's changing and evolving every day. Back then, the NFL didn't recognize fantasy sports. Newspapers didn't recognize it. Sports Illustrated didn't all the major publications didn't even recognize it. And I think we're at this point, when I talk about they always ask me about what's the mandate for sports betting. I'm like, there's many of them. There's ESG, there's growth, there's, small cap stocks. There's a lot of different mandates. It's still really nascent as an investment. And I'm excited that you were both on today. And I think, people see this is going, it's just in the future. And we're like at the baby step. I think we're at like square zero. If you're going to do the innings thing of, 1 to 9, I'd say we're at inning 0 still. There's a lot to go in this industry. I'm excited that both Christian, yourself, and Adam, you were both on today. And I'm probably going to see you at some upcoming events. But thanks to the audience, and thanks for everyone for having us.
Thanks for
having us on. Okay.
Awesome. There you have it. BetMGM, FanDuel. We heard iBet. Jeffrey, appreciate you all for joining us. This is the Benzinga Titans Sports Betting Summit. We promised a jam-packed day. We promised an inside look. And I think that we're delivering on that. Conversation that we just had, heavy hitters in the industry. You get the peek behind the curtain, and that is what this is all about. So for everybody tuning in from benzinga.com on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., keep the questions flowing, keep the comments flowing. This day is for you. Share it with a friend, like the streams, and we are going to keep moving here. This next panel is the fan experience panel. All right, so we're going to be talking about all of us, right? I'm a fan. My hometown Detroit Lions. You see the downtown Detroit background that we have going here. But to welcome the fan experience panel, Zunaid, I would like to welcome you onto the stream with me.
How's it going, Luke?
Going well. Big
Awesome.
day so far.
Yeah, it's been great. Got some heavy hitters, and that's the way we're going to continue the show today.
Excellent. All righty, Zunaid, as an esteemed colleague, an esteemed video personality of me here at Benzinga, I will let you take it away.
All right, appreciate it. And like Luke mentioned, and like the conversations we've been having, it's all about sports betting. And especially this panel is about the fan experience, me, you, Luke, and everybody else that's kind of watching at home, right? Because I mean, you've got the sports, you've got the games that are happening, but how many of y'all have kind of watched an NFL game? Your team is up by 10, but your spread that you bet on is minus 10.5, and you need them to score a field goal, and they're not going to, right? We've all been there. That's part of the fan experience. But we've got a great group of panelists here with us in different backgrounds and different things that they do in terms of technology and different things like that. So let me go ahead and kind of introduce them one by one here. We've got Vin from Mojo. Vin is a co-founder and CEO of Mojo, which is a sports betting stock market that launched in New Jersey this past September. A serial entrepreneur. You've had a track record of success, best known for co-founding the internet retailer, diapers.com with Mark. And then you're also the co-founder and CEO of two media companies, some Spider Studios and Cafes. So you've had a lot of success, man. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much.
Awesome. Looking forward to, especially where betting meets stock market. But next up, we've also got Lee Aho from Perform CB. Lee serves as the executive vice president of marketers at Perform CB, overseeing new business and strategic account growth. Since 2008, you've been an integral part of making sure the growth at Perform CB, and especially when it comes to helping brands and markets execute customer acquisition strategies on a pay-for-results model. Lee, pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, Sinead. Happy to be here.
All right. And then the party continues onward. We've got Jamie, who's a co-founder and CEO of Gaming Society, which is a content and gamification company dedicated to reaching and engaging underserved fan demographics through narrative-driven content and no-risk games, something I need to learn about because I'm always losing money. But you previously also served as the CMO of Excel Sports Management, and you co-founded the Players Tribune with Derek Jeter, which we'll talk about here in a second. You've worked with hundreds of athletes to tell their story and also sold a series to Netflix as well. Jamie, happy to have you on.
Hi, nice to be here. Thanks, guys.
All right. And last but not least, we've got Joe from NASCAR. Joe's the managing director of sports betting at NASCAR. In Joe's role, he manages partnerships with sportsbooks and fantasy sports partners of the world's leading motorsports property. Joe also works closely with the competition group at NASCAR to make sure that we've got integrity, and the government affairs team pursuing a legislation that ensures responsible gaming efforts and capitalizes on NASCAR's own track. Joe, pleasure to have you on, pal.
Thanks for having me, Sinead. Looking forward to it.
All right. Fan experience. I talked about how your team is winning, but you yourself may not be. That's one of the unfortunate experiences I've been on the bad side of. But I'd love to kind of go around the horn and talk about how your company is innovating, or what you all are doing to make sure the fan experience is positive in the world of sports betting. Vin, we'll start with you, then we'll go around the horn.
Great. Well, Mojo, as you described, we call it a sports betting stock market. And our vision, Mark Lurie, myself, Alex Rodriguez, who's another co-founder, and Bart Stein, we always thought that the best betting experience should be really something that is more akin to a Robinhood and how you would trade stocks. And when you do that, we always thought a stock market is more efficient, it's more fair, it's more transparent, it's more electric for the customer. And I can get into exactly how we do it if you'd like me to, which would then, I think, hopefully explain why we think it's the best live experience.
Yeah, I'll definitely come back to that. I've notated it. Lee, what about you, man? Fan experience.
Yeah, so our experience really starts on the front end, on the acquisition side. So through this morning's early sessions, we heard quite a bit of talk tracks around user acquisition. That's our role. So we're helping drive new users to sports betting companies on an outcome-based model, and looking forward to diving into how we actually go about executing on that.
Appreciate that. And I mean, who doesn't love, back in the day was gentlemen start your engines. We've had a lot of female drivers now. I mean, NASCAR fan experience, the thrill of the car driving by you is great, but what about in the sports betting world, Joe?
Yeah, for sure. So NASCAR is, first and foremost, we're not a sports book, right? So we work with the sports books who are putting out our product to our fans, to maybe new fans as well. And what we want out there to the betting audience is a reliable, accurate, responsible product. So NASCAR is one of those unique sports similar to golf, where the full field of action is not typically always on the screen. You can't always see maybe your favorite driver at the moment based on a commercial break or whatnot, where we run constantly. There's no commercial breaks for stoppages in play. So our data feed and supply of that data feed is really important to sports books to create a good product for us. And, it goes to the digital experience as well and the at-track experience. So just like, attending a pre-race concert or, getting your favorite food at one of NASCAR's tracks, we want sports betting to be part of that experience as well. And something that we've been building on over the last few years.
And I know we're going to talk about how, when you're at the track, you may not be able to bet just yet, but kind of the different experiences that you can have. Jamie, when you and I talked, what I was intrigued with most with the Gaming Society was the, I think on your website, it's like bet on women or the women's sports. You just had the WNBA tip off here a few days ago, Go Atlanta Dream. But how is the Gaming Society helping with the fan experience?
Yeah, no, for us, I mean, I guess it's a couple of things. You're touching on bet on women, but before that, just to give a little bit of context, the thing for us, and it touches on betting responsibly, is that sports betting is the biggest growth industry in sports, but 80% of sports fans don't know how to bet. It's very intimidating. It's very inaccessible. And we really are trying to create just a more inclusive product to get more fans engaged and to feel like, I mean, people bet to have fun. It's driven by fandom. They do it for social reasons. And we want to create something that can target a more inclusive, like, everything that's out there, a lot of what's out there is targeting the avid bettor for good reason. And so we're really trying to create unique content, gamification experiences to onboard new fans or sports fans that are new or emerging bettors to be able to have skin in the game. So we prioritize two things. One is targeting women, right? 45% of NFL fans are women, 35% of NBA fans are women. I don't know the percentage of NASCAR fans, but there's a lot of women that are NASCAR fans. And we want to make sure that people are talking to that community and giving them the tools to be able to bet, but it's for everyone. It's not just for women. And the other thing we prioritize which is what you touched on, is how do we use the growth of the industry to propel women's sports forward? And gamification, I think we all know, is the future of fan engagement. Sports betting is ultimately gamification. So we're trying to make it so more people have access and can do it. And it's such an opportunity for women's sports. Our movement is called Bet on Women. We believe if you bet on women, you have to know who they are. And so we have a partnership with the WNBA. We're working with the NWSL. And we're working with a lot of athletes to make it so that we can show that there's an opportunity here, because, and I'll stop here, but we need to make sure there's equitable lines and odds so that people can bet on women's sports. And the disproportionate amount of markets and lines for women's sports than there are for men's sports is crazy. So we're really trying to show that there's an interest, there's a demand, and there's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, and speaking of lines, I mean, whales, sharks, if you will, in the betting world, the people that have that big money, they want to find the edge, right, in their lines. So it's like, hey, if they want to focus on something like the WNBA, where there's not a lot of media attention, you might be able to find a couple of those advantages. Vin, I'm going to come to you. We talked about the fan experience, and mainly I want to focus on the live betting, right? For example, last night you had Celtics take on the Heat. Both teams were down at one point. I think Boston was down maybe double digits. But if you want to bet on them to come back, the game's already started. How are you as a company getting that fan involved in their living room to take advantage of what they believe is going to happen?
Yeah, no, great question. And as I mentioned, it all comes back to this vision we have, this to turn the experience more like a stock betting experience, like a Robinhood. And there's like three core things when we think about that, if you break it down. The first, as I think Jamie mentioned, is that you got to make the odds more accessible. You have to understand what they are. They're the currency by which the customer is deciding whether to bet or not. So when we decide to make a market in that, -110 or -9, like, so for example, the Celtics, I think last night to win the series were plus 900. And I was trying to tell my company what that meant. That meant that was a 10% chance they were going to win the series. Nobody really gets that. So what we decided to do was to take those odds and turn them into probabilities. Much easier for the customer to understand. That's the currency now that we can make a market. It's the first thing, is just to make sure that that the customer understands exactly what they're doing. The next thing for the live experience is that we're making a market, is we provide extreme live volatility. What I mean by that is now you can see what the probability of the outcome is at any given point in time. Like you said, at one point, the Celtics were down to like 20%, and they popped up to 60%, back down to 40%. We basically now provide instant two-way, always on probability so that you as a customer can either get into the position, at 20%, let's say, and get right back out frictionlessly, like instantly. That liquidity is essential. Basically the concept of availability of price. Too often, you're on a book and it's locked, like there's no price to cash out, or the cash out price isn't right. So that's the first thing, when we talk about liquidity. The second thing is to make sure that the fees are low, so that if you want to trade in and out or day trade the game, you can. If you're charging a customer 10% for every trade, basically, or 8%, they're not going to be able to do 4 or 5 trades. They're going to lose their money too fast. So that's really important. And then the final thing on the liquidity is size, meaning you want to be able to get down whatever it is, $100, maybe it's 5,000, maybe it's 10,000. Sometimes you'll see, $10 is what you can bet. That's not true liquidity. And finally, I think you got to make it super visual. And we talk a lot about Robinhood, but you got to dynamically present the experience to the customer in a way that they can follow it. So we track the graphs. There's a lot of numbers going around in sports betting, and we think that visualization is really important. And so I think if you check out how we do it and how we Robinhood it, it makes it, again, more accessible. So when you combine all of that, what I really love about it is that basically our experience is mirroring sports, in the sense, as a sports fan, what I love most about sports is the true unpredictability, the twists and turns of how those games turn around. And our experience, because if it's a market and it's probability based and it's instant and you can see it moving, as I said, 10% to 70% to 10, back down to 8.
Yeah.
You now can feel in your position, especially if you've got a bet, how it's going up and down. And that feeling, I think, is important, of course, and also the control to actually transact. So I think it's pretty interesting.
Especially because you don't have to wait for an event to end to find out, hey, did I win or lose, right? If you feel like, hey, I bet on this team, they're up 10, cool, I'm out because I don't trust them to not blow the lead. I totally get it. Joe, when it comes to NASCAR, there's no chance to go ahead and bet at the track itself, but there are obviously so many sportsbook that have invested in offering odds of NASCAR. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So on the at-track portion, a lot of that is based on legislation in states and how states decide to go about market access. So far, NASCAR has participated in that in a couple of different states, and hopefully in the future, teams and leagues will be involved in that process as well. So you're right. At the moment, there is no sort of retail sports book at a NASCAR track. Hopefully that changes in the future. In terms of the online experience, like I said, it's very important for our fans to have not only a robust product, but also a consistent product across books. We recognize our fans utilize our official partners. They utilize our non-official partners in some cases. So we like to have a consistent offering across sports books, and we really rely on our data partners to do that. In terms of live betting, we talked, I think Jeffrey mentioned earlier in the last panel, we're in the very early innings of sports betting. NASCAR is probably even a little bit behind. NASCAR was not a widely offered product before legalization in the places where you could bet. So having NASCAR as a available betting product is still new to our fan base. So there's a lot of education that needs to go on around, to Vin's point, around what does plus 120 mean to win a stage or to end up in the top 3. So there's education that we do on platform. There's education we work with influencers who have a platform to talk to our fan base about how to bet on the sport. But that's not to say that we're not pushing in the in-race direction as well. You've seen over the last couple of years, in-race for NASCAR has not only been invented and put out to the public in some cases, but we're continuing to grow on that and make our 3.5, 4 hour races into kind of snackable 10-lap chunks where people can kind of engage throughout the race whenever they decide to tune in, or if they have a hunch that they want to bet on during a certain period of the race.
Yeah, and kind of like how I mentioned with Vin, you want to go ahead and have that instant gratification of, hey, am I wrong? Am I right? Did I make money or not? So I was actually looking at NASCAR odds before we hopped on, and there are odds where it's like, yeah, you can pick who's going to win, but it's also, hey, who's going to be leading after the 10th lap is finished, or whatever the case may be. Or in MLB, it's called the first 5 innings. So that instant gratification, heck, matter of fact, in MLB, it's also who's going to score first. Will there be a score in the first inning or not? But I could keep going on and on. Lee, it's your job to bring the people, right? You're the one to say, hey, look, you guys go ahead and take care of business once I get them to you, but you're the one who gets the customer acquisition. what cool things are you doing and using technology to kind of help with those customer acquisition strategies? And I mean, you've worked with a lot of different sports books as well, and DraftKings, FanDuel, you name it, you've worked with them. What is that you're doing that's being successful?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we heard this morning, was the focus on increased customers acquisition while also focusing on profitability. And I think the challenge that exists in most traditional marketing mediums is that those two can have some undesirable trade-offs, right? So really what we're doing is we're working with sports betting brands on that outcome-based model. And that's just a way of saying that they're only paying when a specific action or outcome occurs. So in the world of sports betting, that's generally going to be a new user registration through their web form. It could be the installation of their mobile app. It could be a first-time deposit or first wager, but they're always paying for actual results. And then beyond that, we're optimizing traffic against down funnel events or data that we're ingesting from these brands. So in the example of a mobile app install, if they're then giving us signals for first-time deposit ratios, we're really optimizing the traffic to drive users from placements that are having the best propensity to not only deposit initially, but stay engaged. So, for an overall view, we like the outcome-based model and believe it's really the unlock for aligning customer acquisition and increased market share with increased profitability. And we can apply that to web, to app, across user journeys and traffic channels, for DFS, for sportsbook, for casino. And then beyond that, AI has been a huge buzzword in this space, and it's had such an impact in regards to how we position brands for the most optimal placements, especially in the face of enhanced privacy headwinds. So we're really using AI to better enhance contextual targeting, putting the brands in front of consumers that have a high affinity for this product type or for this product category. So in short, we continue to layer on technology, really AI driven, to deliver this outcome-based approach. And I think it aligns so well with what we've heard throughout the morning in regards to wanting to grow market share, whether it be in a new state that now has acceptance or enhancing market share in existing channels. And couldn't be more excited to continue to align with the strongest brands in this space.
I'm glad you mentioned AI, because obviously we've heard about it in terms of, the chat GPT, this, that, the other. I didn't even think that it could be involved in, customer acquisition. So I'm glad you went ahead and brought that up. I've got about 10 minutes. I'm going to kind of go around the horn. Jamie, I'm going to come back to you. We talked about betting on women. I'd love to know, why do you think it is that so many women, I believe you said 45% was for one of the major sports that you mentioned, watch the games? Why do you think it is that they don't bet on the games as much as maybe men do? And I also want to see how y'all are getting them involved. And we had the college basketball March Madness for women, LSU. Everyone heard about the trash talking, the victory there. How are y'all trying to get involved into educating women to bet on these games if they're interested to do so?
Well, I think the first thing is, it's a huge opportunity, right? It's still getting legalized. Sports betting's been sports' dirty little secret for a very long time. So I think there's been a bigger, a larger percentage of men that's betting, but mostly going through their bookies. Obviously, like, it hasn't been legal until recently. Now that it is, because in Europe there's a huge percentage of women that bet, and there's more people in the States that are women who bet on casino games or do more mobile games. Like, the opportunity is massive. But when you look at the products that are out there right now, they're speaking to mostly men, whether it's the personalities, the content that's being created, whether it's even the logos and like the colors. Like, there's nothing that's more accessible, more inclusive. And so we're trying to create that opportunity. And a big piece of it is education around sports betting, because, again, when women betting, a lot of times, well, everyone betting, it's socially driven, like I was saying, but especially for women, social is a big reason, and storylines is a big reason. So that's like what a lot of what we're building is, and we have newsletters and content, is giving people a reason to care and giving people a reason or a way to bet that's not just driven by stats and analytics. While that's important, it's also important to have like the intangibles and like the stuff that athletes bring and the storytelling around why it's interesting to bet.
It's interesting you mentioned the education part, because when I would tell people, my friends, not just women, but even men, be like, yeah, I bet on this team, I risked $100 to get 100 back. They're like, You only get 100 back. I'm like, no, I get the 100 that I put in, and then I get an additional 100, so I get a profit. So like, yeah, education is such a big part of sports betting. I'd love to kind of go around the horn, and Jamie, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Joe, Lee, and just finish off with Vin. What's in the pipeline that your companies are focused on, maybe in terms of fan experience, but just overall, would love to know what we can look forward to in terms of what you're doing.
We're really focused on the experiential part also, because especially with women, it's harder. Like if you're first learning how to bet, even just signing up to a sports book is intimidating. You have to put your social security number in, you have to link into your bank account. So we're starting to bring the betting academy experience. Our goal is to bring it to different stadiums that do have the betting live, and starting to bring people together to interact and to learn. We have boot camps that we're doing in betting that are virtual webinars, but also in person at different stadiums and arenas.
Oh, sign me up for that. I'm sure there's a thing or two I could learn. Love that. The betting academy. Who would have thought? And that's cool, because you kind of mentioned it back in the day. It's like a hush hush, right? Like, hey, who do you have money on? It'd be like a quiet, terrible stigma around it. But now you've got ESPN talking about the odds and what's this, that, the other. So I love that. The betting academy. Joe, what's in the pipeline for NASCAR?
Yeah, so we're going to continue what we've been doing with our current fan base for the in-race experience or pre-race experience of, having some level of betting education on broadcast, at the track, on our platforms, on our social handles. But in terms of looking forward, to Jamie's point, I think that there's a lot of betting adjacent top of the funnel mechanisms that we can widen who we're talking to. So when you think about virtual sports, which is, a very mature product globally, NASCAR has been getting involved in that, and we've actually launched a game internationally and hope to launch one in the U.S. Pretty soon here. In terms of iLottery, there are opportunities there. We have a partnership with Powerball that just started this year, and then again, that broadens the audience of who we're talking to and the demographic that we're talking to. Parimutuel wagering, NASCAR lends itself very well to parimutuel wagering, and there's opportunities and conversations that we're having in that space as well. And then finally, iGaming and iCasino. Jamie mentioned the demographics there and how that differs from sports betting. Whether it's having NASCAR branded slots or other types of games on iCasino, I think broadens the scope of who we're talking to, and then maybe getting them to bet on the sport. And the last thing I'll mention is on the free to play side, we have a partnership with Facebook where there's a NASCAR free to play game on Facebook, and the demographic of men to women is about 2 to 1, which is a lot higher than what we see in the sports betting space. So we're seeing more engagement from women in that game as well. And, maybe that might lead to other ways, whether it's fantasy sports or sports betting, for them to be involved.
I love that you mentioned the lottery side of things. And, there's a reason they got me to do this panel, because I've got the Georgia Lottery app right on my phone. The Powerball hits $1 billion. I'm making sure I buy a $2 ticket. Lee, we talked about, AI, but what else you got going on at Perform CB?
Yeah, I love that $1 billion is your minimum buying amount.
I got to have the edge, right? It's all about odds. I need plus EV if I'm going to buy a $2 ticket and donate my money.
Yeah, well, you carved us out some extra time, so I love you for that. I'll expand a little bit on the AI component of it. So I see a further utilization of the data. We're really starting to see some strong correlations between placements that perform well for different investment platforms, different streaming companies, ticketing and event apps and sites, and how that audience has a strong affinity for sports betting. So we'll see that continue to increase. I'm really looking forward to seeing brands in this space become better at all-around acquisition, whether it be through the app or through the web. Right now, I think we see leaders in each of those kind of user experiences, and an opportunity for brands to really enhance and optimize how they perform there. And then lastly, I'll highlight the channels. We're seeing more channels if we think about like influencer and CTV, which historically have been less outcome-based, move into this outcome-based model. And we just think that represents such a great opportunity for sports betting brands to continue to grow their user base, their active users, in a much smarter fashion, really paying on a performance or results only model.
I love it. Look forward to more of that. And last, Vin, we're going to talk about Mojo. One thing that was really cool is that you can bet on a player's career, right? So if I believe that Lamar Jackson, now that he's got Odell on his team, if he's going to win a Super Bowl, I can go ahead and bet on him and then cash out as soon as he wins a Super Bowl, and whatever the case may be. So that's really cool that y'all are doing. I downloaded the app, but Uncle Sam won't let me play because I don't live in New Jersey. But what else is in the pipeline for Mojo before we go?
Yeah, no, great. I mean, we just launched a few months ago in September of last year. So our first thing was trying to find that product market fit. I think we got it now. Our NPS is 70 daily. People who are in the app spend an average of 75 minutes in the app when they're betting. So we think we have it. So it's very, having come from Amazon and diapers, it's very, very military style. We've got to add states. We got to add selection. We got to pour the marketing gas on. We just got to execute now that I think we have that electric product. One thing you will see is that we will launch a gamified version itself, like that is sort of similar to DFS, like introducing this sports stock market to California, Texas, Florida in a totally lawful way, because that'll allow us to access probably 55, 60% of the population just in the next few weeks.
Awesome. Thank you. So looking forward to that. And yeah, give me a promo code when there's legalization.
Absolutely.
In Georgia. But Jamie, Lee, Joe, Vinit, thank you so much for hopping on for the Sports Betting Summit, especially when it comes to fan experience. We really appreciate your time here today.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Y'all take care. And that's what we love to do. We love to get your, get you insights from executives, from the folks that are doing at the highest level. And I mean, it's just incredible stuff. Let's see what Luke had. Luke, I want to know.
No.
What?
No, you asked all the questions already. It's my turn to ask you a question.
Is that as long as you don't ask me how much I've lost in my lifetime in betting, as long as it's not that, I'm okay.
Yeah, it might be a regulatory thing that all of my sports books show me how much I've lost cumulatively. Yeah. None of them are positive. Yeah. I almost wish it didn't. But Zunaid, what stood out to you from that conversation?
I think it's just the fact that we truly are in the early innings, right? Like we've got 50 states plus a couple of territories where we've still got so many different individuals to reach out to. Even, it's cool of the market opportunity we have with 45% of women watch a major sport, but so many few of them go ahead and actually bet on the games, right? So I think there's so much more involvement. I'd encourage all of our viewers that are, watching publicly traded companies. I believe perhaps if FanDuel comes out, do your due diligence, because I really do believe in sports betting, in the daily fantasy aspect of things. And each of those companies are playing a big role in it. And I love that, especially if you get to go get a hot dog and bet on your favorite NASCAR driver or whoever else. I mean, that's just huge.
100%. All right, Zunaid, I appreciate you joining us.
Absolutely, Pat.
I'm going to send you off and keep us clipping. Again, if you are just tuning in, this is the Benzinga Titans Sports Betting Summit. This is your inside peek into this industry. It's our job as your friend in the world of finance to bring you these cutting edge industries. We've done it time and time again. We are planting our flag in the ground. Sports betting we look at as one of these next frontiers, one of these new opportunities. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Sportico sports business reporter Jacob Feldman onto the screen. Jacob will be leading our next discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Luke. And let me be the first to wish everybody a happy afternoon here as we keep things going. I'm really excited for this next discussion we're going to have. And so I'll start off first, as you said. My name is Jacob Feldman. I'm a sports business reporter at Sportico, and I'm pleased to be hosting this partnership spotlight discussion between the NBA and Sportradar. We got a lot to get into and two fantastic guests to chat with. I'm going to be talking with Carsten Caro, who's the founder and CEO of global sports technology company Sportradar, an official partner of the NBA focused on helping the league drive fan engagement. And up from the NBA side, we've got Scott Kaufman-Ross, the SVP and the head of gaming and new business ventures for the NBA. Scott oversees all initiatives related to the league's commercial endeavors and the fantasy sports betting landscape. So again, two fantastic people to keep this conversation going. Really excited to dive into how leagues are looking at what's going on and how the technology companies are making it happen. So let's get right into it. I know we got a lot of questions here, like I said, to get into. So Carsten, let's start with you and let's start with some background for this conversation. What does Sportradar do for leagues like the NBA? And let's go back a little bit in time and talk about how this relationship started.
That's a long time ago. It's our current deal is 7 years, and before we had already a relationship for I think 2.5 years. So it's now close to a decade. And the first thing was, and for me, very stimulating and very refreshing talk with the commissioner. And I was sitting down with Adam Silver and said, wow, before I believed he is extraterrestrial, nobody can somehow speak to those boys than the team owners. And And that was very refreshing, saying, Carsten, I need your view on technology, global landscape. And that was the days where we had no sports betting. And I said, well, I believe there is a good opportunity to make something happen. And he said, spot on, yes, I think we should do something around this. And I said, are you really sure that you want to expose yourself in that direction? He said, absolutely, because I believe that's the right way to do it. It's the right way that we are enabling legal betting, sports betting in the US. We have to protect our people. We have to do this in a responsible and accountable way. And I will stand for this. And many people are forgetting it, but the NBA paved the way for legal sports betting in this country. And with all the innovation and all the benefits which we have now from this, that was one of my first experiences there. And congrats to the commissioner that he was so visionary to go that direction. And this is what we see here in the partnership. We see the spirit of, we want to innovate. We want to understand how can we drive value? How can we participate from technology in betting, also with going into our sport fans worldwide? And we should not forget the NBA, and that was for us the most interesting piece. The NBA is very tech savvy. They want to go that way. And the NBA is truly, truly global, catching, I think, 2 billion eyeballs at the moment. Scott knows that much better, around the globe with this fantastic sport. So that was the start of the relationship.
And yeah, and now these days, how is Sportradar helping the NBA engage more of those fans? Adding, there are still a few out there that aren't watching NBA around the world, believe it or not. And how's Sportradar helping that?
Absolutely, and there will be always a few. So not everybody will go into basketball, but it's something where, look, it developed from we have the data and we distribute it into what are the solutions which the market really wants to have. So what we are doing is we are liaising with our betting clients, with the operators, and with the NBA. And we are discussing very actively in project groups, which is organized on a monthly basis. What are the things which we want to push together, and where do we want to go? How can we use technology to develop products for this market? For us at the moment, and it's not a big secret, it's all about in-running live betting. We think that is super fascinating. Every second we have new information, and using for the in-running, the data which we get now from tracking systems in real time is amazing, because that data points per player creates new markets. It's player-related markets, but it gives you also a better insight in the match, a better prediction, a better calculation that goes into big data aggregation, probability calculations, and then model this and get a front end that the user can consume this fairly complex thing in a very entertaining way. That's one of the things which we do together. And I could speak hours about many of those projects which we have there, but it's about big data, aggregating this, getting it into meaningful products where we understand the NBA and our clients, they want to push in this direction.
Absolutely. And yeah, so if you didn't believe me off the top, now hopefully you get a sense of all the various, all the various topics we have to get to and technologies we have to discuss. So Scott, let's bring you in here as well. How have you seen this relationship evolve over time, as Carsten was talking about, and some of the new things you guys are talking about and doing now that maybe were just ideas, close to a decade ago?
Sure. Well, as Carsten mentioned, when we first formed our partnership with Sportradar in 2016, it was right after our commissioner, Adam Silver, had wrote the op-ed in the New York Times that changed the NBA's position on sports betting. And so we were in this interesting position where we were supportive of sports betting, and we wanted to see Congress pass a law to legalize and regulate sports betting. Of course, that's not quite how it happened in the end, right? The Supreme Court repealed the prohibition and states passed laws. But we were in this position where we were supportive, but it wasn't yet legal in our state. And so, we were able to start engaging with folks like Sportradar, with international operators overseas. We met with the folks that were operating in Las Vegas at the time to better understand sports betting and what the opportunity was. But we were sort of 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Obviously, Sportradar at that point in time was distributing our data to betting companies internationally, distributing live video to betting companies internationally, but there wasn't so much we could do in the US. And when it's not legal in your home market, it handcuffs you a little bit. There's only so much you can do. But fast forward to the extension that we exercised in the fall of 2021, which was for an additional 8 years, which, as Carsten mentioned, would give us an additional 10 years of runway on top of the 5 that we already had in the bank. That was in an environment where sports betting was legal in more than 20 states. It had become part of the sports culture in the United States, and that allowed us to lean in much more heavily. And as Carsten mentioned, a huge part of our renewal was the creation of what we're calling a product council. So every month, senior stakeholders from the NBA and Sportradar get together and talk about product innovation in this space, because we believe that sports betting is a lens that many of our fans are using to engage with our sport. And to the point that was brought up before, like, not everyone, obviously we still have a lot of fans that are under the age of 21. We have those that are not interested in betting. So we believe sports betting is an opt-in experience. But for the large number of our fans, they're choosing betting as the way they engage with the NBA. We want them to have the best possible experience, a data-rich experience, an interactive experience. And that's really what the product council is about. How do we take the experience of sports betting? There are so many people in the United States that thought that the way that people bet in Vegas was the way you bet on sports, right? You go to a counter and you give someone money, they give you a paper slip, and then you come back at the end of the game. That of course, is not at all what the experience of betting on sports looks like in 2023. It's interactive, it's customizable, it's in-game, it's reacting to what's happening in real time. It's parlays and same-game parlays and player props. It's a live, interactive digital experience. And together with Sportradar, we're trying to build out these experiences to better reflect what that should look like in 2023.
Yeah. So let's go behind the scenes as much as you can take us into that product council. What are the conversations that are happening between you guys right now? What are the ideas that are going back and forth, and the goals that you guys are setting up, as you mentioned, looking forward as long as this relationship is hopefully going to go?
Sure. Well, your timing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Carsten. You go first.
Good. So look, there are several big topic groups. So one is, as you are aware, that streaming and the digital transmission of the matches is getting more and more interesting for all related parties. How can you create an overlay with betting information on those streams? How can you really give that then as a package to partners from the NBA, that there is a stimulation in there? So that's one of the products where we are working on. Another one is around the fan and the fan engagement. Knowing the fan, understanding the fan, and give him then the customized product. I think that's the key to success. So there is some developments around this. We talked about the player-related market. So the more data points you have about a player, the better you can do player-related markets. But you can also use the player by itself to say, we have 6 on each side. How do they fit together with their individual skills? And what is the prediction if you have that 6 players in this formation against 6 other players? So that gives you a lot of opportunities with probability calculations and then visualizations. You can do rapid markets. Rapid market is something when the ball leaves the hand. So might he go in or not? So you're going to need to really have very quickly this ability to click on the button. You can't type something in. So that's a rapid thing, which you kind of need to visualize. The user interfaces need to be there. So these are also developments which are exciting. But if you group it, one is around, at the moment, the streams. The other one is around the fan and the fan ID, give him the customized journey, and the player-related market. All of this is always driven with the real-time component. That's the real challenge. It's not the pre-match markets. That is, of course, there is innovation in there, but the live markets, and that's where we both believe, the NBA and Sportradar, this is where the train is going. So live is getting more and more popular. We have at the moment 35% proportion on live for basketball. We believe there is no reason to not think that this is following the trend which we see worldwide, which is more in the range of a 70 to 80% proportion of live betting. And if we look 5 years ahead, that is where we believe it's ending. And we have to give the product to the market for this. Scott, over to you.
Yeah, look, Carsten hit on all the big buckets. I would just do a bit of a double click on the opportunity in streaming. And, it's no secret that we're going to be in the market for our next round of media renewals. Our current partnerships with Disney and Warner Brothers Discovery expire at the end of the 24-25 season. And so we're thinking about what the future of sports content looks like. And I wouldn't be breaking any news to say that streaming is going to play a big role. Obviously our incumbents have very popular streaming services, Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, and Hulu on the Disney side. And as of yesterday, now Max on the Warner Brothers Discovery side. And I think you can expect that they're going to want their streaming services to be front and center in the next part of our deals, as well as any newcomers that may come on, whether it be Amazon or Comcast or Apple or Google. There are many players that are interested in our rights. And when you think about the future of sports consumption shifting from the traditional linear model to digital, it opens up a world of possibilities of how you customize that experience for the fan. Historically, the broadcast was a one-to-many experience. Everyone was getting the exact same broadcast, and that was going out to everyone, regardless of their preferences and how they were consuming the content. When you shift to a digital world, you have the ability to customize those interfaces and to learn what your consumer is interested in and serve them up different experiences. And we think this notion that Karsten mentioned of a digital overlay on top of your live experience opens up so many opportunities in betting, whether it's as simple as just having live odds updating or player props updating so you can make those in-play bets so you can see with every basket. I think one of the points that Karsten was making is the NBA is ideally situated for in-play betting. We have literally hundreds of changes in the score per game, where we call ourselves a game of runs, and there are so many opportunities for a fan to change their opinion about what's going to happen because last night the Heat were up 10 points and then the Celtics went on a big run in the third quarter, and all of a sudden the Celtics were up 9 going into the fourth quarter. There's so many opportunities for fans to have a different opinion, and so in-play betting is going to play a big role. You can bring that directly into a digital interface in a way that's really difficult to do in a linear broadcast where you're still speaking to kids and folks who are underage and all that. So I think there's an enormous opportunity there. And Sportradar has a product called MBet that we think can be the foundation for what we build on that overlay, building in live odds to syncing with your accounts with FanDuel or DraftKings so you can actually track your bets in real time and see live probabilities of whether or not your bet's going to win. And one day down the road, maybe even placing a bet directly in that environment. So I think there's a lot of opportunity that's unlocked there. And we are investing now to get ready for when that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very excited to see what you guys do, what everyone does when it comes to, like you're saying, integrating the technology of betting into the technology of streaming and distribution. And I think it goes a long way towards what you're saying before about continuing to make these games engaging for different reasons. What's so exciting about basketball games is, like all sports, you don't know what's going to happen, but oftentimes a storyline emerges, whether it's, is this player going to go for 40 or 50? Is this team going to be able to cut this lead, going into the fourth quarter? And just those kind of questions quarter to quarter or TV segment to TV segment, and really being able to highlight those in the betting environment is extremely exciting. So Karsten, on your guys' side, what technologies are you investing in, have you invested in to differentiate your product and make it prepared for that changing environment?
So look, what happens is following many other industries. So what we see here is an exponential growth of data, which we have to process. So we have to do this in real time, which is the special challenge. And then we have to analyze, can we read out of this data and tell a new story for the sport? That's what it is about. And if you can't tell a new story, you can create a betting product out of this, because the story leads then into, wow, LeBron is now in this position. So how likely is it that he might score a 3 or a 2-pointer from that position, and visualizing this? So that's where AI comes to play. So you're processing these data points and you're comparing it with the history, and then you're trying in real time to get their probabilities in there. So that's one of the things which is fascinating for us. And that's how you're gonna need to handle exponential more data points, build that algorithms, and then get into the machine. That goes very, very quickly into CPU capacity and power if you do this on scale, which is at the moment not really available in the market. So that gets you then into quant computing and those kind of things, which are the real exciting stuff. So modeling this, and we have now in Switzerland a lab where we are doing this initially, that is giving you new abilities about processing and CPU power, which creates a product which is not seen currently. And yes, I'm speaking about the future, but this is what we at the moment implementing. And we see that sport by sport, and it gets more complex. And the team sport, like basketball, is already super complex because you have 6 different players. They are avatars with skills playing against 6 other players with their skills, simulating what might be the potential most likely outcome with those in this formation is getting, believe me, fairly complex from a GPU power, which you need to process this. And I think this is where we are getting. And it creates betting products, but it will also create insights for the coaches. And for the coaches, it might be a live help to change formations, to replace players by seeing this real-time analytics. And we will see more and more a customized product on the fan side, where the fan gets his view. We understand who is the fan. We understand what he wants to see. We want to understand how can we better give him then his view as a media client, as a betting client, as a consumer. And for the coach, how can we support the coaches with such tools and sport analytic tools? And we are on the very, very beginning from this journey, but looking now to what is already available, that will change the perception of the sport and how fans are consuming it. That's for very sure. And this is the exciting part of the story.
Absolutely. And I know even as a fan myself, I'm already seeing that, watching the game last night, you see Heat guard Gabe Vincent twist his ankle and you're already looking for the data of like, oh, what's his max speed now? What's his differential? How far away is he from Jason Tatum when he's taking that shot compared to where he was the previous games? You're already thinking about those numbers. I think we're already expecting to see those. And so being able to deliver those within the course of a game is really going to be valuable and hopefully coming soon. On the responsibility side, I'm curious, and Scott, maybe we can start with you, and Carson, I want to hear your thoughts as well. But what roles do companies like yours have in supporting a more responsible industry, especially as you're saying, this is still a very young marketplace and something that's evolving quite rapidly?
Yeah, look, I think as a key stakeholder in sports betting, we share in the responsibility to prevent problem gaming and to ensure that gambling is being done responsibly. And so we have on our end done a number of things to try to be proactive and get ahead of the issues that we have seen in some other countries. So we are a partner of the National Council on Problem Gaming, and we work very closely with them to make sure that the way that sports betting is integrated into our content and promoted during our games is responsible and appropriate. We joined the American Gaming Association's Have a Game Plan initiative, just to make sure that our teams and our various partners have the sort of marketing collateral to make sure it's clear what it means to quote unquote have a game plan, to set limits, to know what resources you have for help, to keep it fun. So that's something we did recently. We also recently changed our guidelines. So we have had a set of guidelines for how sports betting advertising can appear in our game. So for example, there's only so much advertising allowed during the live game broadcast. There's only certain pieces of inventory that can have sports betting. We don't have sports betting allowed on our jersey patch. We have obviously seen internationally that start to come off. So we have not allowed that. And we recently sort of joined and led the way in a lot of ways, the industry of not allowing the term risk-free. Like that is a kind of a deceiving term. There's nothing in sports betting that's risk-free. You're always risking something. And so, we had a number of our partners that were supportive of that. And earlier this year, we came out and said, no, the term risk-free cannot be used on any NBA platform or in any NBA game. So we're trying to listen to the industry, to work together with stakeholders here to do the right things in terms of responsible gaming. We have a public service announcement that features Ray Allen that kind of speaks to the have a game plan, set limits, keep it fun. And those are the types of messages. So we kind of execute it mostly through policing what is appropriate during NBA games and NBA platforms, but we work very closely with our partners to make sure everybody is doing their part.
And how does a partner like Sportradar fit into that, Carsten?
Well, look, Scott knows that I'm always a bit keen and eager to develop quicker and to automatize a lot of things. So first of all, I have to say, now after having PASPA being appeared 2019, looking to what has happened in this, from an operator perspective, I think every state did the right thing to really closely looking who is supplying the opportunities on the platform side or who's supplying to the platforms, to the operator, whatever information which is mission critical. I personally have to file at the moment 4,500 pages. Every statement for the last 18 years of my credit cards are in there. So and I think the regulator is doing rightfully these steps. So it's a full scrutiny like you have it in a casino license. I think that's the right thing to do to understand who is acting in this market. So you're gonna need to have this operation license in every state. I think that's the first, was really a good step to be done. If I'm looking to responsible gaming and gambling, I would say we could have done more from the very beginning and saying, this is a topic. It's not only underage gaming, it's about whom do we need to protect and how. And I would wish that there is, I know from the industry side, there is a broad alliance of saying we're going to need to have these standards and we need to have it in every state, not only in some single states in this and that way. We're going to need to create that gold standard for every state because that's the most important one. We're going to need to protect our people, the vulnerable ones, and we're going to need to create that rules. I know the industry is driving hard. The industry is fully aligned on this. I know the leagues are fully aligned on this. Now the next step would be, can we create that fully aligned also on the state level and saying, can we install those standards? It would be so much easier for the operators. It would be a help for the leagues to create this. And I would use technology. So yes, we can track user behavior very well. We can use AI to predict what is on this user leading into an addiction. We can use AML data requests to see, is he credible? Does he have this kind of money or not? What are our rules? What is our code of conduct? What do we allow, what not? And I think everybody agrees there is a difference between a multimillionaire and somebody who has a normal income. What is the tolerance here? How much should he spend into this before he is developing an addiction? And there are so many researchers in that space. And this country is very well known for having one of the best scientists on this. So I would say, let's get this more automatized. Let's help all together that we create this gold standard and that we not do it state by state. It would be great if we have this more on a federal alliance, even if I understand the regulation is state by state, but this is important. We're going to need to protect the people and we are all fully aligned on this. That's where Sportradar would be happy to contribute more from a technology perspective. I think many of those things can be automatized and it can be fairly rapidly deployed. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm with you on kind of standardizing this. Even from my reporting standpoint, it's always complicated to figure out, again, what the rules are state to state and things along those lines. We have time for one more question, I think. So we've been talking forward looking for a lot of this conversation. I want to go backwards looking a little bit. And I'm curious, over these last 5 years, since PASPA was struck down, what has surprised you most? Scott, we'll start with you. What has surprised you most about the rollout of legal sports betting in terms of how the products have evolved, in terms of how the fans are using this, in terms of the conversations within the league? What's been the biggest surprise to you compared to your expectations a few years ago?
Sure. I think it was pretty remarkable to see how quickly the sports media landscape embraced sports betting. It was virtually overnight once the law changed, and while there were some skeptics for a number of times, of course, the NBA was a little bit ahead of the game there, us being kind of the first major sports organization that changed our position. It seems once the law was repealed, everybody was in favor. And, it went from, we won't touch sports betting to we're investors in sports betting companies or launching our own sports book with our name on it. So it was pretty remarkable to see how quickly it changed. The only other thing I would say that has just always shocked me is how difficult it is to pass a sports betting law. It is, I would say, having had the privilege of going to various state capitals and participating in these conversations with legislators, virtually everyone is in support of sports betting and passing sports betting. I think virtually everyone agrees that it's better to have a legal regulated market for sports betting than to push it into the underground. But the various stakeholders, whether it be the casinos, whether it be the tribes, whether it be the convenience store lobby in a particular state, how and who can get in the way of the what. And so it has always shocked me how difficult it is to pass a law when largely everyone agrees sports betting should be legal. And we're obviously seeing that in Florida and California and Texas, some of our larger states. So hopefully those states can move forward in not too distant future.
Absolutely. And I think people from a lot of different industries would remark on how difficult it is to pass legislation these days. But that's probably for another panel. We've only got about 30 seconds, so we won't get into that right now. But Carson, I'll give you the last word here. What have you learned about the U.S. market? What surprised you about the U.S. market over these last few years as it's started to grow up?
A surprise for us is how much the U.S. sports bettor is looking to player-related markets. So that is really very interesting to see. We do not see that pattern internationally on this scale, but the sport fan here is following his idol, the player, and creating markets around this is something which is picking up significantly more than in many other countries which we see. So, and player-related markets, they need the deep data, which is again the tech play, which is, okay, you would assume this in the US, it must be a tech play. And having that demand on deep data is here. But the player-related markets are for us a surprise. Looking to, if you would have asked me 2019, does that play a main role? I would say no. I see now it's very important, and it is a source of innovation.
Yeah, fascinating. Awesome. And I'm excited to see how that continues to develop. Karsten, Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today, participating in this partnership spotlight discussion. It's been a ton of fun. Like I said at the top, we could have done this for an hour, but we'll leave that for next time. Now I'm going to hand things over to Luke for the Benzinga Titans Sports Betting Awards.
All righty. I appreciate it. And that was a nice little tease there. Again, this is the Benzinga Titans Sports Betting Summit. Stay tuned, everyone. The awards are coming. I'm not quite ready yet. We got a nice little tease there. The awards are coming. Again, Karsten, Scott, Jacob, thank you very much for the conversation. High energy, hard-hitting questions. And again, for everyone out there, we do this to give you an inside look into this industry. Benzinga is planting its flag in the ground and saying this is one of the emerging spaces to pay attention to. We've already seen so much growth. A theme that I am pulling out of all of our conversations today is that we are still in the early stages. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome my colleague Mitch Hotch onto the stream with us to host our next discussion.
All right. You know, they call me Money Mitch, and I'm super excited and ready to get into it today. Of course, we're going to talk about the name of the game, the future of tax money, legalization of sports betting. Today, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Mike Ciavarelli, Executive Chairman of Ellis Game Technologies. We'll be discussing this fascinating story behind Ellis Game Technology and the future of sports betting. Before I begin, I'd like to, of course, say Mike is a true titan of the sports betting industry. So happy to have you on today, Mike.
Thank you, Mitch. Nice to be here. Thanks for having us.
All right, let's get right to it. Can you share the story behind the founding of Ellis Game Technology, formerly known as Empire Global, and what initially drew you to the massive opportunity behind sports betting technology?
Well, Mitch, you know what's interesting? I must admit that in 2013, I never thought that 10 years later that I would be considered a key figure in the early development of the regulated U.S. sports betting industry. I will admit, though, that I'm very pleased to have chosen this calling and have been fortunate to be considered an influential sports spokesperson during this period. You know, my background career initially was investment management, and that, of course, has its own variety of fast-paced regulatory nuances. And that career turned into a passion for sports and my involvement in hockey as a development coach and author. You know, and I, even though I observed, especially from many soft-spoken hockey dads and soccer moms, as you know, they're very quiet, that there's clearly a massive underlying passion for rooting for their favorite teams and their favorite players, you know. So with my background experience, it was really quite strange to me at the time that sports betting and sports wagering was prohibited or restricted both in U.S. and Canada. I guess my greatest pleasure now is working with U.S. regulators and legislators, in D.C. and especially on our work now with in New York alongside the New York State Restaurant Association and bringing opportunity to many business owners and understanding the hard work that's being put in by folks like Senator Adabo and Representative Pretlow in this monumental industry, and as it develops and evolves going forward.
Well, it seems to me like, Mike, you really were looking at where the puck was going, not where it was. And your company has deeply been involved, of course, in the Italian market. Ellis Game Technology, of course, has gained valuable insights of the evolving regulations there. How have these insights shaped your understanding about the potential regulations here in the United States?
Yeah, I think that analogy comes from Wayne Gretzky, right? Knowing where the puck is going and being there when it gets there. I guess I think the greatest advantage that Ellis had was being led into this business by our key people in Italy, and having cut our teeth in the highly regulated and highly competitive Italian market. I know that Ellis as an organization currently gets very little value, say as a listed company on this foundation. But I think it's very important to remember that Italy had its PASPA moment, if you will, almost 30 years ago. And in the US, it's only recently happened, say 5 years ago this month. So the key takeaway that I learned is, first, as a family-oriented business, our team in Italy really, impressed upon me that they never want to face the wrath of Italian national and tax police, knocking on their door in the middle of the night with children in the house. So the rule around the office in Italy and all of our organization there in Italy is to follow the rules. That's the rule. So the second key takeaway, I guess, also is that I hope, and I hope it continues to take shape here in North America, is that to eliminate illegal or underground betting operators, if you will, legislation and regulators need to essentially pollute the territory with regulated operators, not necessarily restrict them or make it impossible for them to do business, with excessive tax regimes or limiting product rules or things of that nature, because the unauthorized operators are always going to be in the background. It really will be up to those very regulated operators that follow the rules and that will push out the illegal operators, so to speak. Okay. So it has to be collaborative with both regulators and operators working together to accomplish that mission.
Love it. Breaking into the sports betting industry in the United States can present significant challenges due to the unique regulatory landscape, whether you look at it at a state by state or even at the federal level. Can you shed some light on the main barriers to entry and elaborate on the strategies that Ellis Game Technology proposes to overcome these obstacles?
Well, sure. I mean, the most what should be taken into consideration really firstly is sports wagering itself is a unique business. The outcome of the game, or really the outcome of your product, is really no different between whether you're Ellis or whether you're DraftKings or MGM or FanDuel or whomever hangs a shingle in this industry. The product at the end is always the same for everybody. If one team wins and the other one loses, that's the outcome from all of us. So if offshore operators, and this might be the point that you're looking for, if offshore operators can offer better odds or better lines, where players can find that better product, if you will, they will find a way to play offshore rather than onshore, which they did for 26 years under PASPA, right? I mean, it did exist. So a sports bet, as I mentioned, is really a particular kind of product, and that we all sell, but we don't know what we're selling until the game is over. It's just like the Toronto Maple Leafs against the Florida Panthers. I mean, who would have thought, right? So, our business really, it's not like selling apparel or brewing coffee or beer for that matter. And I've even heard some people comparing our business, I guess, or the opportunities in our business like stockbrokers or Robinhood or things of that nature. In fact, bookmaking it's not even part of business 101 that you can learn in school, right? It's, in this business, you simply can't say, this is what my raw material costs are. This is what my selling cost is. This is what my profit margin is. You can do a lot of planning, but in the end, the outcome of the wager can't be controlled. Otherwise it's fixed. At the end of the day, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with the product. So with that in mind, we need to find unique ways to offer a better experience for sports bettors in the market, not just offering best lines and events, but also the potential result for the same wager for them. In other words, if they're putting $10 down, and keep it a little bit simple, where if they put $10 down, they know that if they're playing with XYZ company, they might win $12 if their favorite team comes out. Or if they play with company B, they might win $13. I mean, make it about as simple as that. So, so that's one element. And then, the one thing that's really most important about us and our operation in the business is really about building trust. And it's always about being competitive so that your patrons can believe that you as an operator are playing fair. And that really is quite a key way that the market, I think, can evolve.
Of course, from a regulatory standpoint, we all strive to have the ideal landscape that fosters growth and innovation in sports betting. In your opinion, what specific changes would you consider crucial to creating that most favorable environment for the technology behind the sports betting?
Sure. Well, I think one of the points in this question, like that you mentioned, is that there must be equilibrium. Right, there must be equilibrium around among all the fish to have really a robust industry here in North America. Players must have multiple options from both big operators and small operators. Think about it this way. I often use the word fair, as I might have used a moment ago, in a very simplistic manner. If there's only one sports bookmaker in town, do they really need to give the players the best odds? Well, really, the answer is no, because they're the only game in town. If that were the case, really, how long before other operators start popping up and saying, well, that one bookie is unfair to players? So really what Ellis is looking for, like what we're hoping to contribute in this industry in the early years, is that we prefer a balance of regulatory openness. In other words, don't restrict the market to a monopoly. Don't restrict it to one operator. It's better to have a healthy competition from experienced operators that understand sports betting and that have good control over, the bonus model, and rather than just simply buying customers. I believe that we need a contiguous tax regime across the nation. And also the access to the market should not be choked by restricting licenses to one or only a few operators, because really, what that actually does is opens a pathway and opportunities for offshore companies to continue to offer competitive betting options. And I think some of the, these are some of the simple ingredients for a successful long-term development of our business in the United States and Canada.
Yeah, I love it. Free competition is so important, right? I mean, we're all trying to just be on one standard. And I agree. I've used from the top to the bottom, right? I've gone all the way up the chain and all the way down the chain. Just recently taking a trip over to Indianapolis and then having some fun there. This is what it's truly about, giving us the ability to choose where we can go versus only one avenue.
No, exactly.
In recent headlines, we have some notable acquisitions, right? Like Fanatics acquiring PointsBet's US, which is really shaking up the sports betting industry. Do you anticipate a trend of increased acquisition? Additionally, is Ellis Game Technology interested in pursuing such opportunities to expand its market presence?
Yeah, like it's exciting. Any kind of flash moment like that is really interesting. But if you kind of step out of sort of the the sports betting and the excitement of sports, and we look at it just purely from an economics and from any business, like a business standpoint, like I guess in any business and in any industry, there exists an efficient ecosystem that develops. There's big fish, there's small fish, and then there's the middle class fish, right? That exists across all nations and all type of industries. So in my opinion, the process of evolution of regulated sports betting in a unique market like US needs to be better dissected before we see, I think, some of these big acquisitions, these big mergers, I really hate to see a setup where we see a too big to fail catastrophe in our space as well. I think the positive could be outweighed by the negative. You follow what I mean? So, I guess in my view, there are a number of actuarial reasons for looking at these kind of things. The first, really, in my opinion, is that the U.S. is not a new market, even though it appears like a new market. And I think some of your prior hosts have explained this. Even though PASPA prohibited sports betting in many states for so long, the art of sports betting existed in a big way prior to May 2018. So we don't have, in this country, we don't have novice consumers. We have novice operators, right? So so if these novice operators create an unstable market, then the repeal of PASPA might even fail to reach its set of goals and objectives, and by default actually reopen the market to underground operators. So the second thing I would suggest in that point is that regulators also need the cooperation and collaboration from all of us as operators that have experience in international jurisdictions. Because as a simple example, what has happened in Europe is going to happen here in the United States. And one glaring example that I think I can extract in this question is responsible gaming. Offshore operators never were required to impose responsible gaming procedures. But when the industry started to unfold here, I saw, a variety of ads on television that, and subways and buses. I think everybody I spoke to has told me all about this. And I said, I saw them and I said, they said the most awful things like, play your money and take your winnings. I said, well, what happens if you lose the bet? So the mode of advertising, the mode of drawing players, I think was incorrect. So Europe led the way by eliminating sports wagering advertising. I think your prior guest from the NBA was talking about removing sports bet, providers from the shirts, etc. So a lot of what's happened in Europe, including limitation on bonuses and features and so on, I think is likely going to happen here. And the simple business takeaway is if your entire business is built on buying players to capture market share and simply choke out the little guys, based on the type of product that we're offering to consumers, the sports betting, okay, I think that's built on a very weak foundation, and it's really not really quite frankly appropriate here in this case. So mergers in the industry of sports wagering, I think, are exciting developments. There's always excitement, just like when PASPA was repealed in 2018. I mean, we saw a big rush to everybody wanting to, get involved in sports betting companies. There's plenty of unbridled exuberance when such a deal is announced. But I guess to your question, there's plenty of value that should be, attributed to a smart organic growth plan, as well as a big merger acquisition. And that all being said, Ellis also values the benefit of synergies that could exist between two or more entrepreneurial entities that think alike, that have the same ambitions. Ellis, we built a company on this basis. You can look back and since 2014 that we've been filing as a regulated SEC filer. We continue to do so in this mode going forward. And just like a big splash deal like Fanatics acquiring PointsBet has great excitement, organic deals also make a lot of sense. Although big deals and small deals alike still have their challenges, right? I mean, some are successful, some are not. I mean, as business leaders, we're like myself and your prior hosts and the ones coming in behind me are, we're human. We're not immune to wrong decisions. So really, it's how you correct your navigation from such a situation that defines one leader from another. And definitely, Ellis has taken the steps to look for opportunities to build its business.
Loving your insights, Mike. I could talk to you all day on this, but I'm going to skip towards one thing that I think is very important. Looking ahead, of course, Ellis Game Technology is finally on the cusp of launching its first mobile platform in the U.S., right? So how do you anticipate this significant milestone will impact the company and shape its future prospects?
Sure, absolutely. So Ellis I guess really, quite frankly, Ellis has a well-defined plan for shaping our long-term success in the developing U.S. market. And that is to build a network that supports customer acquisition through already patron relationships. I think it's really quite important to look at the way we've kind of unfolded in the United States. We did not rush out of the gates like fairly stated. Many competitors in the business have. Indeed, what we saw that the mobile channel provides betting velocity, because we do have both channels in Italy. So we understand that it provides bet velocity that is not prevalent or possible in a retail environment, but it's also the challenge of having to buy players to, either through bonuses or affiliate referral fees that have a real deleterious effect on profitability. If the company is not profitable, then it really can't exist. And I think that investors would be interested in regarding Ellis as though we were recreating an infrastructure and an ecosystem that works in our industry in two ways. It has a channel for cost-effective customer acquisition and a channel for providing the most competitive odds, lines, and features that sports bettors really want. And that really is the opportunity that we're seeing now. We're really well positioned. We've created our infrastructure, and now we're rolling out the new product that we think is going to be quite exciting for our patrons in the United States.
Well, thank you for joining me. Like always, uncovering another story here. Ellis Game Technology, Mike Trevorella, Executive Chairman, Ellis Game Technology.
Thank you,
It's great to have you on today.
Great. Thank you, Mitch. Thank you so much.
All right, let's bring back Luke Jacoby. How we doing?
Doing well. Still sunny here in Detroit. Conversation is still flowing. We're getting that inside peek. I appreciate you taking us through it, Mitch. What
Awesome.
stood out to you from that conversation?
Well, one thing is definitely a new platform, right? We're always looking for platforms. As sports bettor myself, I'm always looking for the next opportunity to see what the competition has for me and what their competitive advantage is, right? That's what it's all about, uncovering the new stories. Thank you, like always, Luke. I'll see you a little later, my friend. Enjoy the sun.
All righty. Talk soon, Mitch. All right, everyone. I'm going to give you a lay of the land as to where we stand. Again, this is the Benzinga Titans Sports Betting Summit, your inside peek into the industry. We're about to hear from Ricky Gold, CEO over at Juice Reel, and then we're going to be getting to the awards. We have some recognitions. So stay tuned. You want to hear who Benzinga's editorial team, our panel of judges, is called out as the names to watch. That's what you're going to get from the awards. But before we get to that, Ricky, I'd like to bring you onto the screen and let you take it away.
Thanks for having me, Luke. It's great to be on a panel with, some of the brightest minds and strongest leaders across sports betting. Excited to cover my segment on smarter betting. For those who don't know, I'm Ricky Gold. I'm the founder of Juice Reel. What Juice Reel is a sports betting tool built for the sports bettor. And how it works is you can download the app off the for your iPhone or for your Android, and you're able to link in any of your betting accounts. So if you bet at DraftKings, if you bet at FanDuel, wherever you bet across, anywhere in the 50 states, you hook in your account and all of your open bets and all of your bet history automatically loads into the Juice Reel app. And from there, we can give you analytics on yourself, like your profit and loss over time, how you're doing on straight bets versus parlays and teasers. What are your best and worst teams? Analytics that really help you understand your strengths and weaknesses. But where things get really interesting is how we use the data that our whole user base connects in to help our users all bet smarter. And so, there's a bunch of features in the app. I'll talk about my personal favorite. It's a feature we call Sharp Mush, because it helps you follow the sharp bettors and bet the opposite of the mush bettors, the poor performers. And so how it really works is, if you think about it, when everybody's connecting in their betting accounts, Juice Reel is able to know who's a good bettor, who's a mediocre bettor, and who's a poor performer. And we use that knowledge to help the whole community bet smarter. And so if you think about a game, like the Nuggets-Lakers game, game might be 50-50 split, half the people on the Nuggets, half the people on the Lakers. But imagine if you were able to see that all of the smart bettors are betting on the Nuggets and all the poor performers are betting on the Lakers. That differential is a really insightful piece of information that's useful to sports bettors to help you follow the smart bettors and do the opposite of poor performers. Juice Reel is really a tool that, that's one feature that helps you guide, what your next bet is. And that's really the foundation of what Juice Reel is. Help you make a smart, more informed decision. And then once you've decided what to bet on, the next question is where do you go bet it? And, most markets in the US, there's multiple sports books in each market. And when that's the case, like, a lot of your hosts had described, each of the sports books offers slightly different prices on each bet. Similar to like an Expedia, Juice Reel is able to show you the different lines, different odds, different prices at each of the different sports books in your market. So, that goes back to what Juice Reel is. It's a tool to help you bet smarter. If you're going to bet on a game, you may as well take a +8 spread instead of a +7.5. And a tool like line shopping that's in Juice Reel is a tool that can help you do that and bet smarter. Going back to, I don't want to run through all the features in the app, but if you're going to be a sports bettor, it's always a smart decision to try and make more informed decisions and make more efficient and streamlined decision making to go bet it at the place where you can get the best price.
All right, Ricky, let me ask you this. As a user, do you have a decision that you've made because of the Smart Mush feature? Like you saw something pop up and you're like, all right, I'm going to take some action here?
Absolutely. I mean, I come from I started
give us
this
a story. Like the story is what we'll remember.
Yeah, I mean, it happened in the last couple of days. I'm just using the app. I'm a sports bettor myself, and if you're just seeing smart people taking the Nuggets and the poor performers on the Lakers, my heart was telling me take the Lakers. I always think LeBron's going to be the hero that everyone wants him to be, and that he's been in the past. But sometimes the numbers can take you pretty far. And I built this product so I can follow the data that it has, and that led me to the Nuggets.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to bet against LeBron. It's something that I don't think I would have the stomach to do. But were the smarter, more accurate bettors making that call?
Yeah, they were, and to our users' enjoyment, they got to, a lot of them ended up tailing the Nuggets.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, Ricky, we appreciate the breakdown. And now it is time for the most exciting part of the day. The Benzinga Titans Sports Betting Summit Awards. So
awesome. I'll turn it over to you to announce that. I'm sure you got the winners handy.
All right. As long as you're ready for them.
Absolutely.
All right. So I'm going to ask producer Aaron, it is time of the day. If we have a drum roll, let's get one queued up. If not, let's get them on the screen. These are the hottest companies to watch in the industry. Let's see these award winners. There we have it. Those are the mainstays. Those are the champions of the industries, the big players bringing wide adoption out to the markets. We saw a lot of those names on our screen today, but we have a second category. We've seen a lot of these names on our stream today, too. These are the challengers. Ricky, are you ready to see who got named as our challengers?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's roll it. righty. Ricky, any names jump out to you from either of those lists?
Yeah, I think Fanatics being on there, I think that's probably the most interesting story out there right now, seeing, what they're doing from, they have a humongous database of all things sports fans, and to see what they've done with PointsBet and meshing their sports betting knowledge with that database is going to be a really interesting thing going forward.
Absolutely. And again, what I love about today is that we were able to get so many of those voices here with us. This isn't just hey, we're the big media company that is giving you our opinion. We want to bring it together for the community, where we want the community to be able to hear from these companies directly, hear from the executives directly, and truly get that inside peek into the industry that they wouldn't otherwise have. The only thing that Benzinga does is we make the claims to say, hey, this is the next big industry we're watching, and then we turn it over to the investor. So thank you everyone for the time today. Ricky, thank you for being here with us. I'm gonna have to download Juice Reel. I would not have bet against LeBron. Clearly I should have. And thank you to our sponsors, gambling.com, Ellis Game Technology, Juice Reel. All the content from today will be published onto benzinga.com. You will find the profiles of all of our speakers, our award winners. You'll find the hottest clips. You'll find the articles. Ask that everybody give this stream one final like, one final share. Save it so that way you can go rewatch it, pick up on the pertinent conversations, and we will be back on Benzinga Live at 8 a.m. Eastern tomorrow.
Thanks for having me on, Luke.
Thank you, Ricky.